We're here to make the book that you want, sometimes in ways you didn't realize you wanted it. And it's always going to be your choice. If nothing else, you can take your marbles and go home. Hello, welcome to the Gulfwood Lounge. I'm Arc Press Senior Editor DJ Butler. Come on in out of the rain. Before we get started, take a minute to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, go to arc.press and sign up for our mailing list, and follow us on X at arc_press. Today we've got a very exciting show for you. We've got a special guest interviewer, which is Jonathan Keeperman. And actually, it occurs to me, I don't know if is it that, or am I calling you Lomez or something?
Well, you know,
else?
Jonathan's fine. We can do Lomez. We can do whatever we want here on the Gopherwood Lounge. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome, John. We're happy to have you.
Well, let's start with this. How about we do a few introductions and introduce our audience to the editors of Arc Press, and these are going to be the guys stewarding this imprint. And so let's start with the senior editor, head editor. What is our title here?
Well, I'm editor-in-chief of Arc Press.
Editor-in-chief Tony Daniel. Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and where you came from and how you ended up here?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a lot of background in writing originally. I had a bunch of stories out in the 90s, and I drifted into science fiction and some books that eventually led to me doing a bunch of editing when I eventually moved to New York and getting a lot of editorial work to support myself. And I sort of eased into becoming an editor after a bout of teaching after that. And I was a senior editor at Baen Books for 10 years. Before that, I worked for Baen as well. I wrote a bunch of their copy, and I did a bunch of their slush reading, all sorts of things. And then I was senior editor at Regnery Books, the nonfiction imprint, for 2 years. And that was really cool. That was completely different than working at the fiction place, but I started to really miss fiction and wanted to get back to it. Mm-hmm. And after Regnery got bought out and all of us got our asses fired on Christmas, which was very nice, I just decided, man, I want to go back to fiction. Mm-hmm. I really love it, and I want to do it with. I want to do it from where as authentically the way that I envision fiction being, which is in not being this sort of pablum that New York is enforcing on everything, the publishing industry.
Yeah,
and do something a little bit, as good as the old stuff. And by the old stuff, I mean the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I'm not talking about like ancients, although that's fine too. So a return to storytelling is the basic idea, and I met you guys, and it was a match made for doing some really cool stuff.
So I don't mean to age you, Tony, and answer this however you feel is most appropriate.
Like time has
but I'm curious. You're 10 years at Baen. You're 10 years in science fiction publishing. What period of time are we talking about?
All right. Look, so I was, I did this for Dave the other day on the show, but like, as a philosophy major, I went to film school after dropping out of philosophy graduate school. Dropped out of film school, became a science fiction writer, moved to Seattle, lived in a bus, and 49 Crown Super Coach, wrote a bunch of short stories and started to get published. Mostly in Isaac Asimov science fiction magazine, edited by Gardner Dochois. Was a Hugo finalist, and I was in a bunch of Year's Best and things like that. And then wrote some novels, including Metaplanetary, which is one of my best thing I did novel-wise. But then I drifted into, and I had a kid basically, and so I started teaching and working part-time for Baen doing things like I handled all the unsolicited submissions, for instance. And Tony, the editor at Baen, the publisher at Baen, had known me from my days of being a writer. So, and I taught him David Afsharirad.
You're taking my.
Okay, never mind.
We'll get to him. And
He has there's no David narrative left. That's it.
Yeah, that was it.
That was
He learned to
Skip
run
right
on
over
Tony.
it.
But so this was about 2011 when I really came on at Bain.
Okay.
And then I had worked there part-time writing all their copy before that. And then 2011 up till I worked for Regnery.
Okay, very good. And I want to get back to that period of time around 2010, 2011 in the science fiction world, and then further into the 2010s, because if science fiction is anything like these other cultural milieus where I was, whether it's academia or literary fiction, that's when the politics really started to change.
Well, we have a name for it. We called it the Sad Puppies.
The Sad Puppies, right?
Yeah.
We'll get to the Sad Puppies controversy shortly. Before then,
Dave and I were literally there at that Hugo ceremony.
At the Hugo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear all about that. Okay, before we get there, moving on to him.
That's right.
Yeah,
The young whippersnapper.
your
Yeah.
protege,
Yes.
David Afsharirad. David, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got hooked up with Tony Daniel and in the Bain universe and in the science fiction universe, and what brought you to this table today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've told this story on many podcasts. I'm here because of Tony, and I owe him so much. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I figured I should probably get a college degree, and I liked reading pretty well. So I thought I'll be an English major. And and somewhere I thought, well, maybe I should want to try doing this, like writing. And so I was at University of Texas at Dallas, where Tony was teaching, and I took a literature of science fiction and fantasy course from him. And I took some of his writing workshops and, would hang out afterward and talk with him and with some of the other people who kind of wanted to do this. And he invited me into his sort of secret writing club
group of all the kids that were good and I wanted to keep.
And he let me in too. Hey,
we needed a jester.
That's right. And and so I graduated, or was getting close to graduating, and I asked Tony, what if I wanted to be a writer, what should I do? And as we've just had a great example of Tony's delivery style, I didn't know him well enough to know when the subtle differences of sarcasm and sincerity.
I'm still learning.
Yeah,
myself.
it's like 1 point off. And so he said, well, you could get an MFA. And so I thought he was suggesting I get an MFA. So I did that. And I went to NC State. And then, which is in, it's in Raleigh.
Okay.
And Bain offices are out that direction. I was aware of Bain in that I knew some of the authors. But, most people don't follow publishers, right? And so, I couldn't have told you it was the Bain roster or whatever. But weirdly, Tony moved up there. That was the exact same time he had moved up there to become an editor at Bain. And so he, asked me if I wanted to intern. And I was like, yes, And Tony Weisskopf, who's there, who she knew I wanted to be a writer, be an editor. And, they just gave me a lot of opportunities. I edited A Year's Best for Bain for about 5 years. And that was really sort of like the training wheels of how to do this. And, and so, I was at Bain for a long time doing various things, mostly whatever Tony didn't want to do. He was tired of doing. He would just shuffle off onto me, and so anyway, and so then when this came up, this is just such an exciting project. I think this is an important project and an exciting project, and like you said, maybe resetting things, getting us back into a sane timeline.
And you have a very different sensibility toward the things that you like as well. You're really into noir and mysteries and
yeah. So this is another theme. I think maybe I don't know.
I think you're the one that got me liking Elroy. So.
James Elroy, yeah, sure. So. What's interesting, I think, maybe about everybody here is I think we're all fans of science fiction and fantasy, but and we all have written science fiction and fantasy and edited science fiction and fantasy. But I don't think of any of us, maybe Dave the most, maybe that's slanderous, I don't know, as like,
Oh, here we go.
as like really like
As being a nerd.
as being a nerd.
Yeah,
like
I
right,
heard
no,
that
but like
coming.
yeah, no, but right, like I feel like we all like this stuff because we love literature and we love the things that science fiction and fantasy and mysteries and genre can do. And I think that sensibility is what's gonna, make ARC stand out, and has already. Like, is the way we're coming at this is not like from a super fan place. It's from an appreciator of literature and what this type of literature is. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but this has been my
We'll find out in editing.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just take that out.
Well, no, so, I want to come back to this, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We still got to introduce Dave Butler, but...
The nerd of the group.
Well, so this is a question I have for you guys. Science fiction, fantasy in particular, of these different genres, maybe noir and, crime writing, not so much. But, it has this reputation of being sort of home for nerddom or nerds. I find this to be actually somewhat limiting, and it's a kind of self-deprecating way of summarizing who the audience is and who might be interested in this sort of thing. And I think it's a mistake. It's certainly fine if people, want to self-identify as being a nerd, quote unquote, whatever that means. But it doesn't have to be the case that science fiction is exclusively the domain of nerds. And in fact, I think one thing I'd like to see happen, and I wonder if you guys have thoughts about this, is expanding who science fiction and fantasy can be for. Certainly there's a long tradition of science fiction and fantasy that is attractive to people who are more sort of military-minded, hard science, doesn't have to be so strictly sort of, what's the right word here, for the squibs, I guess. And so, do you think there's merit to this idea that we can expand the audience for these genre imprints, that we ought not to lean too heavily into the sort of stereotype of what science fiction is and who it's for?
It's I think of science fiction as a particularly good way of combining philosophy and fiction. And I think it's science fiction in particular is the combination of philosophy and fiction into a literature, because science fiction is all kinds of things other than just talking about science or guns or whatever. I really think it is like, it's the genre where philosophy is paramount, where your idea of the sense of wonder, which is the basic emotion that science fiction, aesthetic emotion that science fiction evokes, is that sense of wonder. That is, and maybe fantasy. Fantasy's doing something else maybe, but it is almost entirely philosophically based. That's what the sense of awe that we have in the universe leads to us thinking, how is this? There must be something beyond this. What are the values that created this? What is create? These are philosophical questions, and that's what science fiction is really good at, like getting at. And it's not good at getting at what it, as an actual argument or anything. It's a good way of getting at the emotional resonance, the associated things that come with the thoughts. And the thoughts are secondary because the story is primary with science fiction, and the characters and the setting and everything else that goes with storytelling, plot, yes. So the philosophy is part of the setting, but it is the essential. You can't have a good science fiction story that's really good without some playing around with philosophical concepts. So I think that's a defining part of science fiction for sure.
I think the massive enduring success of Tolkien, for example, and the more recent but massive success of Harry Potter or Game of Thrones, for example, shows us that a audience that does not see itself as nerds can absolutely enjoy genre fiction, and those are stories that have succeeded in film version, but they've also succeeded massively in print as books. There's an aspect here, and this has been going on for a long time, of pure social snobbery, where if the literary establishment likes a book, then it is a literary novel, even if it is 1984 or The Handmaid's Tale, and if they don't, then it is assigned into a ghetto. It is called science fiction or fantasy. Or we like a book, it's magical realism. If we don't, it's fantasy. So I absolutely think people can enjoy this stuff, and I'm not sure they even need to be taught to enjoy it. I think they just need to be shown good things.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So
You don't want to be teaching them anything.
Yeah, and I think too, if I may, like it was in a writing class. There was some Russian term. I don't remember what it was. It was basically the concept of the word translates to like strange making. And this was not a Tony Daniel writing class. It was another one. But they were saying, even with like the most hardcore literary realism, right? What you're trying to do is to make the world feel new to the reader, right? You want people to look at things in a new way, in an exciting way. And I think that is built in, particularly science fiction and fantasy. And the best science fiction particularly, right, to me, is kind of what Tony's talking about. It does have this built-in philosophical expanding your mind, stretching, making the world seem new and different so that you can think about it in a way that you haven't before, right? And you can obviously do that in literary realism, but it's going to take some chops, right? It's going to take chops in science fiction too. But and this is the thing to me, like there is a place for, and I love, sort of whatever you want to call it, popcorn books, right? But when science fiction and fantasy become sort of comfortable, and like we've seen this before, and it's like an old friend. There's value to that too, but the interesting thing to me is when it breaks out of that and pushes you,
or it's both that and something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I sort of
never denigrate the basics of genre stuff. You don't want to break the rules of genre. You want to use the
you're
rules
living
of
within
genre
it
to create something great.
Right.
The genres have unique virtues too. Science fiction is uniquely the genre that asks large what-if questions about human technology and about science. And we live at a time when we're looking in meat space, if you will, at questions about, look, are we going to be on Mars soon, right? And will Elon have his dream of dying and being buried on Mars in a colony there, right? To what extent do we incorporate AI into our culture, right? Science fiction is the genre that asks what-if questions about future technologies, right? So to eschew it is to give up a really important tool for having these kinds of debates about what sort of a future we're going to have as humanity.
But we're not in the ghetto anymore. I mean, the world has been overtaken and transformed by sci-fi fandom. It's and it's to a degree that I find kind of annoying.
I think this is actually another point, right?
Okay, before we get into the problems of sci-fi fandom and upset our audience too much, let's first meet Dave Butler.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So Dave, you're the third part of this triumvirate editorial team.
Yeah.
We are in your Gopherwood studios here, repurposed for Passage TV.
Yeah.
So Dave, same question to you. Your background, how you got into publishing, writing, and how you met up with these guys in order to start ARC.
Yeah. I think of myself primarily as a writer, and I have since I was about 7 years old. When my dad gave me a copy, my parents gave me a copy of The Lord of the Rings. My dad had been on he's an economist. He'd been at a conference. He brought back a gift for everybody, brought me those books, and I put myself in bed and I read for a week to get through them. Almost burned the house down because the bedside lamp, I fell asleep, it fell down, it burned a circular hole through my pillowcase. I woke up, fortunately it's a very durable pillow. I thought of myself as a writer when I went and got a bachelor's degree in Near Eastern Studies, and when I decided that I wanted to get married, and my fiance did not feel like she wanted to be poor, and that seemed like that was fair, so I went to law school instead of trying to become a science fiction novelist at the age of 23. Working in London for 5 years and in New York for a year, and then working in-house in semiconductor manufacturers as a corporate lawyer, I thought of myself as a writer the whole time. And I would, I wrote spec scripts, and I wrote a lot of songs, actually. And then in 2010, I had a little bit of a financial windfall. We sold a company where I was part of the senior management, and it did not make me rich, but it gave me about a 2-year period during which I could do whatever I wanted, and so this is how I'd always seen myself. So 2010, I started writing seriously, and wrote things that would later get me agents, get me my Random House contract, get me my initial Bain contracts. So I've been writing as a novelist. I mean, I wrote a terrible novel when I was 17. But I have.
Haven't we all?
That's going to be the first in the ARC archives.
I'm quite confident I have destroyed it.
Oh no!
Yeah. But I started seriously writing novels in 2010. Been writing since.
Dave is the author of my favorite DJ Butler series is his Witchy Eye series.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just
So
fantastic.
We're DJ Butler is your pen name
For adult novels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not adult.
But in the
novels,
Gopherwood
though.
Lounge, in the
I
Gopherwood Lounge, you're just Dave.
I always go by Dave face
Okay,
to face.
perfect.
Yeah.
So, one thing that's come out of all three of these, biographies we've just heard is the initial impulse to be a writer.
Yeah.
And it sounds like everybody at this table firstly identifies themselves as a writer. Editing then is a supplement to the writing. Is it the way to pay the bills while you write? Do you think of editing as a sort of totally separate object from writing? And if so, what are the different ways that you approach writing or storytelling or the written word generally as a writer versus as an editor?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's been a transformation process. I primarily think of myself as an editor now. The main thing is going through becoming a teacher, doing 6-7 years of that, and before that, to support myself, I did all kinds of other things like that were editing. I did coverage, I did book reviews out the Yin Yang for Publishers Weekly and all kinds of other places. And slowly you become someone who knows how to evaluate other people's work. And then I became a slush reader, so I read thousands and thousands of unsolicited manuscripts. And then I taught kids, college kids and grad students for 6 years in writing workshops. And I slowly became, and I never had much of an ego about, like, I don't need to be famous. I want my work out there, but I don't need to be famous. And it just went away. With 2 kids, my ego was trampled. So I just don't care anymore.
This was for you, Koki.
That's right. Yeah. So
Maybe we shouldn't say your kids' names.
It's
Here.
fine.
I don't know.
It's fine. But they're adults now. So, but it slowly, I became an editor over that. And then by the time I was at Bain, I was an editor. And I was working on people. I was trying to make their books better. You got to care about the person. You got to care about that author's. You are the reader. You belong to the reader as an editor, in my opinion. And so, but that author's got the stuff that they want. And so you gotta find a way to fit what that author's really good at and what they are bringing to what you and what your readers that you have in your mind want. You got to find that intersection. That's the beautiful like intersection of those two Venn diagrams where this is what the writer's great at. This is what readers really, that's the message that will speak to them. You find that intersection when you're an editor, and you do it through all the different means that you have as an editor, including the grammar and everything else, because it's got to communicate. And if it doesn't communicate, then it's not fiction. It's just something in somebody's head. So you want, and you're doing the author a favor as well. But for me, authors are tools for the readers, and I think that fundamental sort of paradigm shift was what made me an editor.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about editing actually, and in a way increase the salience and importance of that part of the writing and publishing process. I think we're in an environment now where people have this idea, well, if I'm a writer, I just write my book, I can put it out on Amazon and self-publish it, and so what do I need a publisher for? Of course, as publishers, we need to be able to address that question and have good answers to people who think that that's the way things ought to be done. And one of the reasons why publishers need to exist is because we provide this editorial infrastructure. And I think it's important for us to maybe explain what is the editor's process? What does the editor do? When we receive a manuscript, how do we help make that manuscript into something that is far better than what the primary creator, the author, can do for him or herself?
And we are creatives too. Mm-hmm. It's not just a reactive occupation. It's a partnership.
I mean, maybe we can get into more detail, though. So, is it that the editor sees things in the work that the writer can't because the writer is too close to it, and they have a hard time? One thing I found in my editorial work is that oftentimes the writer doesn't actually know what he or she is trying to accomplish with a piece of work. They have a certain idea of what the work is about, what their story is about, what they think are the core themes, or where the real energy and interest is in the work, but they're mistaken. They're sort of blinded by their own process or their own sort of emotional attachment to certain aspects of their own work. So how does the editor help sort of interdict and ameliorate some of those tendencies that the writer has to overlook their own work?
Y'all can speak to that.
Let me connect this into sort of the prior question. I think it's actually immensely interesting to understand that at the center of Arc Press are writers. Mm-hmm. We're not an alien species. We're not somebody fundamentally different. We've all written books, and we've written short stories, and we've published. There is a force at the center of ARC that understands what you, the writer, are going through, and we want you to succeed. Mm-hmm. And we want you to succeed. The goal is not to. Let me wind back just a step. We're not just a service provider, right? Mm-hmm. ARC has a point of view. ARC has an existence separate from the books that it's going to publish. We pick books and writers we want to champion because the points of view those writers are expressing are consistent with the points of view that ARC wants to express, and because we believe in the books and we believe in the writers, right? So ARC has a point of view, but fundamentally, if you're editing a book, the goal is not that I will take this person's book and I will restructure it into a thing that I want. The goal is, hey, this book has an inner book that is better, that is trying to get out. Mm-hmm. What needs to happen to this book to help it become its better self? And yes, sometimes it's that the writer herself is maybe unclear about theme, has done things that undercut the theme of the book, right? or sometimes the book is boring, right? And like there's a great idea, there's a great story, but you got 40 pages of nothing because when you wrote, you were pantsing it and you were trying to figure out the story and you haven't cut that out yet. Sometimes it's language. Sometimes it's helping a writer realize, hey, look, do you understand that you do this when you are writing? And you know, some of that is style. Too much of that you become self-caricature. Let's help you find a way to get to a stronger prose. It can be any of those things, but the goal is so. Steve Albini died last year.
Yeah,
I was a big Steve Albini fan. He owned a recording studio called Electric Audio in Chicago, and he denied being a record producer. He would say, "I don't do the things a producer does. I'm here to record," and he recorded a lot of famous albums. In Nirvana's "In Utero" was a famous and sort of controversial one because allegedly the band loved it. This is the follow-up to Nevermind. The band loved it, and the studio or the record company hated it. Right? Steve's point of view was, I'm there to make the band the album the band wants. Right? And I think of us that way. We're here to make the book that you want. Sometimes in ways you didn't realize you wanted it, right? And it's always going to be your choice. If nothing else, you can take your marbles and go home, right? But we're here to make the book the best possible book you can make it with whatever insight and guidance we can
But
give
the
you.
way to do that is by thinking in terms of readership. I mean, it's the way you ultimately shape it. How does this book communicate to somebody else? How do you get them? How do you get it to say what you want to say to these other people in a way that's meaningful to them, that moves them? And you can never forget that the reader is there, and that is basically the problem with a lot of writing, is that the writer is expressing themselves into a void, and we have this inner conception of who the readers are, and it shapes how we edit the thing, and it will lead to more people being moved and getting that author's ideas and getting that author's unique perspective on the world.
So the editor in this case is a kind of mediator, liaison between the author,
midwife
and his sort of
of the
pure
soul.
vision, midwife of the soul. That's beautiful.
That's right.
Okay, so
That's the title of this episode.
we've been talking here about
Soul of books.
It's Tony Daniel's literary biography.
We are
title.
Socrates of books. That's right.
Perfect.
There we go.
We've been talking here about editing. We've been circling around what is the main object of this conversation and what we're doing here today, which is talking about ARC. And ARC is a sister imprint of Passage Press. We have shared corporate infrastructure. Nonetheless, these are two different entities, but we're aligned in certain ways. I think certain fundamental ways and the kind of literature we want to see in the world. But and I could answer this question on behalf of Passage, but let me put the answer to you guys on behalf of ARC, which is, what is ARC? What part of the sort of literary landscape is ARC attempting to fill? What are you trying to accomplish exactly with this imprint?
Well, I mean, we're trying to reinvigorate American fiction. That's the general idea of it. Is I put this like, you think about it like, I was talking about Frank Lloyd Wright House when we were talking about this before. Think about Falling Water, the famous
House.
Frank Lloyd Wright design with the creek under, where nature and humanity are just combined in a sort of harmony, and it's just a beautiful structure, and it's great American architecture in my view, and so it started falling on hard times over the years, and it lost its original owners. Other people took it over, didn't see this, what it was or how great it was, what they had, or maybe they just didn't have the money, whatever. And it started to stink and smell because things that are built over water are leaky. And I sort of analogize this to what happened to American fiction in the last, say, 20 years, 30 years. It got decrepit. It started falling in. That's what houses do when you leave them and you abandon them and you start trying to repurpose them for things that they're not meant for, like communicating, like social justice ideas or things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not what fiction is for. Although there is something wrong with it, but it's not something that for fiction to deal with. Fiction is about something completely different. It's about the emotional experience of being an individual human. So I want to bring the idea is to sort of bring that back and I think reinvigorate the great books and the books that people were reading in this right before. I know you Passage guys hate the word woke because it's so old-fashioned.
That's fine. It gets the message across.
Before this overtook us, it wasn't that long ago to some of us. It seems like yesterday, but. We're just concentrating on story first, and so it's really that simple. And it's like rebuilding, and then somebody bought Falling Water, and they had the vision of we're going to make this new again, make it like it was, and yet you can't make it like it was. You can't go back to that. It's still the new Falling Water that they've brought back, and I want to do that with fiction. I don't want to reprint all the James Michener mammoth books or anything like that. What I want is to find the new great Michener, or the new James Elroy. He's not dead, right?
He's not dead.
No.
He's going to need a replacement eventually.
As of this recording.
As of this recording. But the new whatever. The idea is popular fiction used to be popular, used to be read by men, and because fiction is just absolutely drifted into a female-only readership. And that in a certain sort of female-only readership as well. And and I think that men have lost, in particular men have lost a resource, a spiritual and aesthetic resource that used to, people used to read this stuff, And now, if you look at books in bookstores, it's clearly all intended for female readerships, getting on the Oprah Book Club with your book and selling 1 million copies that way. And the male reader's been abandoned. And so I wanted to also bring us back to just putting out books that guys will read, and not guys that, yes, guys in the sell a quarter and, and people in publishing going to work, but even people out here in Utah or like in Alabama where I grew up, and because everybody used to read. And so to do that again and to bring that back, but to do it in a way that is fit for the 21st century, for us, for our times, that's the thing that we want to do. And I think that what men like to read the most is genre books. They like to read thrillers, they like to read historical adventures, they like to read science fiction, they like to read fantasy novels that are heroic or epic. Sometimes humorous, and they like stuff that is not, it's not that I'm against literary fiction. I absolutely will publish literary fiction, and I think the qualities of literary fiction is its own genre. It's not a thing that's better than anything we're doing. It's just a different genre, and we will publish that as well, but because our aim is not to just publish genre. We call ourselves as a genre publisher, but really what we're doing is trying to rebuild Falling Water, rebuild this beautiful thing that we had. And I think it is a necessary thing for now, because everybody's lost in these quantized worlds of video games and social media. And nobody has that 4 hours to set aside anymore. They won't take the deep time to read a book. A book takes 20 hours to read, and so you have to, it's as a big a commitment as sitting through an entire season of television to read a book or something like that.
Yeah, so that raises a lot of interesting.
We need that.
Yeah.
We need that, and nobody's providing that for American men.
Yeah, and I think the problem, to jump on this too, is that we are seeing you know, in a way, I'm sort of like, hey, that's our stuff. Don't touch it. When people are talking about this, where I'm like, we're doing the great American novel for men. But I'm joking. You are seeing people talk about this now, and this problem that publishing has just completely abandoned male readership. And I think that's good. I'm actually glad that's out there, right? I think one of the problems is one of the knee-jerk reactions that I see a lot, especially in this indie world, is, well, you know, we're not publishing books. We've abandoned men. Men don't read anymore. So let's find the lowest common denominator. Forgive me, slop, because that's what men really want. And some men want that, and I like pulpy stuff too.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but I think that sells men short. Like, right? I don't want to make it sound like read ARC books because you'll be educated, right? These books are going to be fun. They're going to be exciting, right? They're going to be engaging, obviously. Yeah. But I bristle at this idea that men just want mindless entertainment.
Yeah.
Right? And we want to have entertainment, but it doesn't have to be mindless.
And
right?
both.
Yeah. And I think that's what Tony's, I mean, you picked Falling Water. That's a work of art, right? You know.
Yeah. But it could be something goofy that.
Some ride at Coney Island.
I don't know about that.
Well, let me pose a difficult question.
Carousel horse.
So,
Yeah.
you know, men aren't reading, okay? Or, you know, not as much as they used to, and certainly not as much as women. And market forces have dictated that the publishing industry ought to lean into that trend and cater more to women, which
I think
further alienates men.
Publishing made it. I don't think it's.
Well, let's talk about that. So did publishing engineer a set of circumstances where men no longer read? I mean, I frankly find that a little bit hard to believe because it's against their basic sort of market interest. Why would you want to alienate half, or even, let's say, you know, conservatively, a third of your potential buying audience? What does the reading, or excuse me, the publishing industry have to gain from that?
Because they're not trying to make money on books.
Okay, good. Let's go. Yeah.
Publishing is a prestige industry that is owned by giant communications conglomerates, and most book publishing exists to give certain, and everything else is ancillary to this, to give certain political or cultural figures sort of a cachet, because it's still got a cachet left over from the old days, in order to create a set of conditions for these companies who make most of their money outside of publishing in their communications, to keep them well regulated and to keep a moat in place for them. And so you see these enormous book contracts for politicians, almost all Democrats in America, who don't, you know, those books are not going to earn out. You just know it. There's no way they could possibly earn out, and they don't. It's a bribery system. It's a way of creating a regulatory infrastructure for these communications conglomerates, and that is the purpose of most publishing. And then within that, it's because it doesn't matter anymore, or as much, whether you make money or not. To the you know, maybe, you know, the lower level guys, they don't realize this perhaps, and they're still like deludedly trying to make a buck. But what you get is people being released to follow it. You know, they hire a bunch of Seven Sisters Ivy League graduates, and they become the editorial, and they just publish stuff that they think they want to read, and there's nobody else, and there's no market forces that are shaping that anymore. It's become this dolloping out of prestige onto certain individuals, and everything else is just ancillary around that. Genre is really the only place that has to, you know, that does make a buck anymore, I think. So it's just not the case that we are in a simplistic, you know, capitalistic system with publishing. It's because it's owned by these 5 companies, and only one of them's American, by the way. Simon & Schuster is owned by a
KKR.
which is a holding company. Which, well, we'll see how long they're owned by.
How long it stays American?
Yeah,
A few more years.
They're going to sell them.
Yeah.
And so they bought them to downsize them and sell them, or build them up, or whatever the hell. So you got Random House, Penguin. This is German. That's Bertelsmann. You have Holzbrink owns the others. You have News Corp, which owns HarperCollins, and you have the French conglomerate that owns
Hachette.
So, and there's only one American major publisher anymore, and they're not really. They used to be owned by CBS, who sold them to KKR. I think that was how it went. But these are giant communication conglomerates that run things like, internet infrastructure things in their countries and stuff. It's not. Nobody has American consumer interest at heart in these companies. Ultimately, the big guys don't.
Yeah, I don't think most lay people understand how the Big Five works and this larger infrastructure that rules over major publishing, and so that's useful context. And I'm sympathetic to that larger argument. Truthfully, I'm also not entirely convinced that men are eager to pick up literary fiction.
Well, we're
They're
going to find out.
Well, no, I think though, I think there's going to be a subset of readers for sure who want this stuff, but we're not going to, overnight get back to a situation where the majority of men in this country just start reading literary fiction again. That's going to take some time. They're going to need to sort of relearn how to read and rediscover why this is a useful part of their content consumption behavior. Because like you said, it does take a lot of time. There's a big investment in reading, and there are a lot easier ways to absorb content, whether it's just flicking through social media or scrolling the timeline or whatever,
but there's
playing video games. Okay, but we're going to have
gets to you.
I agree 100%. That's why we're here. That's why we're investing our lives in this. However, it is going to require something other than just putting a book on the table.
We're got to entertain.
Yeah, we got to teach, people how to read again. And so I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts about larger strategies to not just reinvigorate publishing from the standpoint.
Science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah, so you publish the books. So you publish the books, but what else can we do to bring an audience into this world that right now is on the sidelines?
Yeah, so I think Tony basically already hinted at the answer to this question, right? You don't sell literary novels, you sell funny novels. This is not a literary novel, Jeff, right? This is a hilarious novel making fun of the CIA, right? And you get to read that, and if somewhere along the road, if in hindsight or whatever, he discovers he's just read literary fiction, great. Maybe he'll read Confederacy of Dunces next or whatever, right? But you sell the entertainment, right?
Yeah.
This is what is this going to do for me? I'm going to have fun. I'm going to have 4 hours of fun while I read this book.
The other thing I think, what genre fiction has done so well is create a sort of community around these books. The, interest in science fiction becomes a kind of shelling point for certain kinds of people who are aligned in a variety of ways. And I know, Dave, you just got back from LibertyCon, for example, in Chattanooga.
Yes,
and there are these occasions for people to get together and talk about the books, yes, but talk about all sorts of other things as well. And one thing we're trying to do with Passage, of course, is create a similar kind of sort of community around the books. And the books then, reading the books comes with other benefits beyond just what's in the page. It gives you access to other like-minded people. So, to get people reading again, I think you do have to offer some kind of ancillary benefits. There ought to be some kind of status or prestige also that comes with participating in this sort of content, and that's something I'm.
Yeah, I think it's completely correct to say these books we're going to entertain you know, and
The entertainment is a constraint that genre has that that allows the author to write a better book. The fact that he got entertained and can't just write whatever the hell it's one of the constraints that genre imposes, and just like a sonnet structure imposes a constraint on a poet. So, and it makes it better a lot of times. You're a better writer because of that.
I would argue literary fiction has to entertain as well, and I think it's a mistake of literary writers to think they're not obligated to entertain their reader.
Yeah, the problem to me with literary fiction, which I still love, I'm going to plug Willie Vlotten. Everybody read Willie Vlotten. Okay. Have you read any of
I
his?
have not read
Dude,
Willie
you
Vlotten.
would like Willie Vlotten. Anyway, there's great stuff, and you know, still being written, obviously, but I think it became like jazz, where it stopped being a popular for the masses, right? Like everybody listened to jazz in the 30s. It's pop tunes, but and then it becomes sort of a niche thing that then you kind of get more navel gazing, and even if that's not accurate, it becomes a perception. So then less people read it because of that. And
true of poetry as well.
Poetry is
incredibly insular, incredibly academic.
Poetry's gone.
And so
up its own.
Yep.
So anyway, so I think entertaining is obviously first and foremost, but sort of like saying like, well, you'll be entertained. It's like I'll be entertained watching TikTok videos or whatever too. So there has to be something past that. And I think as you were talking about with Passage, and what I think of as arc, like really, maybe this is wrong. Maybe this may be my last interview, guys. There may be someone else in this chair next time. Yeah. No, but to me, it is an aesthetic. Well,
let's talk about that.
And I think I was reading about, what was I reading? Maybe the Yarvin thing in the New Yorker. I don't know what it was, right? Talking about Dime Square and all this. And how part of that, which you guys are very much a part of, I guess, right? There's all these.
I disavow.
You disavow. Okay, well, but sort of that, you can't disavow Yarvin, though.
I love Curtis. I love Curtis. This gets into complicated.
Okay, yes, I know, right? All these little, but
micro scenes.
Regardless, sort of just the new right, maybe. Is that right? Can I say new right?
I mean, I have to say I don't like any of these labels precisely because they create boundaries around what you're doing, and what we're trying to do is transcend these sort of petty, arbitrary boundaries about who is and isn't allowed to participate in ideas and storytelling, etc. I don't want to have a sort of exclusionary mindset, or narrow, or I shouldn't say exclusionary. I don't want to have an insular mindset.
No, right.
And you'll just make your own little garden over. You don't want to do that.
We don't want to do that.
We don't want ghettos. We have enough ghettos. We don't need to create another one.
I guess what I'm trying to get at, though, maybe I got too in the weeds, right? But sort of a broader thing is that there is sort of this movement I see, particularly on X, right? That it's cool. It's punk rock. Probably calling it punk rock is like old and not cool. But you know what I mean? Like,
it's punk, man.
Of a certain aesthetic behind all of this, and I think we as ARC really want to contribute to and be part of this too. Of like, sort of. There's a magnetism to it that you want to be part of this. It's cool. I mean, I guess that's the only thing I can say, right? And like, there's nothing less cool than saying you're cool.
Well, that's right. So
but, I don't know how to word this otherwise.
Whatever it means to be cool just needs to emerge out of what the content is. I think something you're pointing at, though, is that it's different from the prevailing culture.
Exactly.
And it's this coherent but separate space outside of what we've all identified as a kind of degraded or abandoned literary community. Dave, I want to get back to something you said that fits in with this question of aesthetics. So, okay, yes, we want it to be fun. We want these stories to sort of highlight the human experience, have a kind of philosophical point of view, as Tony said. But you also mentioned that ARC has something distinct about it that you're trying to accomplish, these art books. And as an editor, you're trying to select for that distinct quality and shepherd writers and their stories toward this distinct quality. But what is that? What is an ARC book? What does that mean in terms of the kinds of themes, maybe, the sort of tone? How are you conceptualizing this aesthetic that you're trying to accomplish with this imprint?
Well, you should, talk about some of the books we're actually going to publish.
It's sort of like, sorry to you asked Dave, but I'm also Dave.
Yeah, that's
technically.
true. That's true.
No, I think it's coming out of like our three sensibilities fighting like cats in a sack.
We do this like every morning.
Like every morning.
And we have a meeting and we call it Mr. Ed.
And then
that's the
then we'll talk about the books, right? And it's going to emerge out of the books that we end up publishing. But
is there something concrete we can point to though at this stage?
Okay. There are several. There are several things that we have said before we had any manuscripts, right? And one of the things, and I've rotated this mug, and the camera probably can't zoom in, but the what it says on the side of the mug is the humans win in the end. And
that's our motto.
It's our motto. It's the human. It's one of the things we've been saying from the beginning, and we have turned down manuscripts because we read them and said, there is no discernible victory for human beings in this book, right? So an optimism and a pro-humanity, right?
We're not talking about like Pollyanna-ish.
Right, and it doesn't mean elves can win in your book too, right? But it doesn't have to be Homo sapiens.
Let's talk about what that means. So, I love noir, for example. That's of the genre, literary genres.
Or
that's probably my favorite.
Right?
They are sort of dystopian. Even you read like Raymond Chandler novel, and it's while Marlowe might somehow prevent the worst from happening, he's still living in a kind of degraded city, and there's sort of misfortune and despair and suffering all around him. So when we say the humans win in the end,
but Marlowe still accepts that nightly quest, and he's still trying, right?
He's Sisyphus.
Right.
And or think like 1984.
He's not going to give up.
Succumbing to the despair. It's fighting against it at all times.
You don't have to.
And I think also it can get real meta in a way too, which is that like, and I don't know, like we would have to see if we'd have to be careful with this, if we would publish it, but 1984 is just that's a pretty bleak ending.
Sure.
But I think that book is still pro-human because largely it's a warning.
It is 100% a warning.
And so within the book itself, the humans don't win.
I think we would probably publish 1984 if somebody sent it.
But so it can be within the book itself, it can be pretty bleak and dark, but that if it feels like the purpose of it being bleak and dark is a sort of a grander, more
or the character achieves a victory just by enduring.
One of our most popular books in the Passage catalog is the memoir of General Peter Wrangel, the White Army general during the Russian Civil War, and of course we all know how that ends. The White Army loses, the Bolsheviks win. However, at the end, and the whole point of the book, is Wrangel sort of continuing to stand up and pursue life in the midst of this destruction and chaos and entropy. And the book ends with Wrangel shepherding hundreds of thousands of Russians to safety out of Crimea. And there's something sort of very noble about that idea of, even amidst the worst possible catastrophe, continuing on living, surviving in the midst of that for the next fight, wherever that might come.
How did you become aware of that? Because I didn't know that story until and why did you decide that, man, that's something that I'm going to do with my publishing company?
The Wrangel book in particular.
Yeah.
So there's a guy who used to be online. All I know about him is that he did one semester of film school at one point, named Mystery Grove Publishing, who published Always with Honor several years ago. How he came about the manuscript remains a mystery, but this fell into our possession about 2.5 years ago. And so this is all owed to the, again, mysterious figure of Mystery Grove Publishing.
Wow.
I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah.
But you identified it as
Yeah, I mean,
what made you fall for it?
so the Hoover Institute at Stanford has a bunch of really good Russian Civil War history. However, that history and the history that we received about the Russian Civil War was largely from the point of view of the liberals who were trying to support the Russian parliament, who then defected to the United States. And they really sideline the sort of monarchist position in Russia, and people like Wrangel, their reputations and histories were kind of left to the historical dustbin.
It's like the people that were on the wrong side in the Spanish Civil War.
Correct,
Yeah.
which is other works we've published that pertain to that period. So largely what we're trying to do at Passage is sort of reconstruct these certain aspects of history, these narratives from relatively recent history, 20th century history, that have largely gone obscured, what we call obscured history. So that falls into that category. Okay, getting back to ARC, however.
Let me throw out a few other propositions, right? So I do think there is an emergent aesthetic, and this is we try really hard to be very. We keep putting ourselves out there to give writers who are interested in ARC a sense of who we are and what we like. So as we are figuring out ARC's position, they can see it also. But there are a few pretty clear kind of planks we started with, right? One is humans win in the end. Another is, look, we're interested in books that sell to men. We value men, right? We respect men. Men are important. Our self-image is that we are men who read, and we think that's great, right? So that's part of our aesthetic, our ethos. That's
how we got the girl.
Is how we got the girl, yeah.
There's girls that go for that
by writing. So the another is, and I'll throw out two more here. So a third, I guess, is that whatever I'm going to use for convenience the label wokeness, but we're not woke, and that exists on at least two levels. One, we're not going to publish books that try to comply with, communicate, perpetuate this what Orwell called the smelly little orthodoxies of the last 15, 20 years. And two, we're not going to use them either. We're not going to apply those criteria to our writers. We just don't care what your intersectionalities are, right? That's not, we're not looking for whatever by list of people, right? So, and the fourth thing I would say, and this has really come out in our literary context of our literary prize, the ARC Prize, which is as of this recording is open. The deadline is October 7th, National Taco Day.
Yeah, where should viewers send manuscripts if they have them?
Our website, arc.press, has, I think it's like /prize, but arc.press is a very simple website right now. You can go there, you'll find
You
it.
should be able to find it.
If you
There's
can't
like 4
find
tabs.
it, you have some real challenges.
That's the first filter.
Yes.
That's the first filter.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things we've been so the ARC Prize, 50,000 plus word manuscript. The theme is America 2076.
Yeah.
Okay, a novel can be any genre, doesn't have to be science fiction. America 2076, and the winner will get a publication contract with a $10,000 advance. And one of the things we've been saying, and we say it humorously, and it is true, your book does not have to be pro-America, but the winner will be. So we're all pro-America, and again, that doesn't mean we're publishing a funny novel that sends up the CIA, right? Being pro-America does not mean that you have to accept every institution and everything they've done since 1776, right? But we're not in so much. Traditionally published fiction is interested in undercutting and destroying American institutions or traditions.
Yeah.
And we're
Traditions.
not.
And our heritage more broadly.
And our heritage broadly,
Yeah.
and we are not.
Good.
Right? So,
Yeah.
like, those are sort of the big corners of the space, and then within it, we're figuring out what we collectively like enough to publish, and some of that is only really visible in hindsight. It's the book that strikes you enough that Tony a month or so ago said something I thought really profound. It's the first time, so I noticed.
You wrote it down in your.
I said,
in
"Wow,
your
Dave
Dave book.
Tony said
something
something
really profound today.
No. He said, look, unless you're willing to read a book 4 times, you shouldn't acquire it. And that's a practical matter. That's advice for the editor. You'd be sad if you read a book over and over
Well, you're going to have to
again.
read it 4 times anyway. So
That's the
Yeah.
well, that was advice for the. I mean, you don't have to read a book you buy for yourself 4 times,
Yeah.
but you should want to.
yeah. Well, let me ask. So we've talked a little bit about science fiction. Briefly touched on fantasy only through I think the vehicle of Tolkien. Noir we've touched on a bit. What are some other categories of writing, some genres or forms that you guys are particularly interested, that you think the market is underserving at the moment? For example, I have some young kids. The YA market is a mess. I can't find anything written in the last decade that is at all interesting to my 10-year-old, who is rather precocious and likes to read and would potentially be interested in newer, younger fiction. So is that something you guys are interested in as well?
We're doing it. We've created a YA series called the American Treasure Hunter series, ATH,
Yeah.
and we sort of bill it as Hardy Boys crossed with National Treasure, crossed with Outer Banks.
Great.
And it's just about these 3 guys. They're 17 and 18, but the idea is, I think, it's written as if the way that a 16-year-old or 15-year-old might idealize being a senior.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not from the point of view of a 17-year-old or 18, because that's essentially an adult, or very edge of adult. But it's aimed at that readership, and precocious readers can start as young as 10, of course. I certainly did.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's aimed at that. At boys. Nothing is written for boys. No YA is written for boys these days.
Yeah.
It's just look at the covers, pastels, and everything is written for females and a certain sort of female audience. That's when I say men that we're writing for. This also includes a lot of women who are also alienated by the stuff. That it's just like. You hate everything. Everybody's goth. I have nothing against goth, sort of culture, but the idea that everything must be counterculture to appeal. Our guys are not. They are somewhat. They're just themselves. They're authentic. And there's a really smart sort of dude who figures a lot of stuff out, and there is an athletic guy. They're all smart. There's all of the characters are smart. That goes without saying. But our athletic dude, he's on the football team, and it's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're friends.
Mm-hmm.
The nerd and the jock are friends, and they solve mysteries and they find treasure together. And there's a gearhead, sort of blue collar guy.
I want to point out that the nerd jock alliance is a natural alliance throughout history, and it's only a kind of like recent. And I have theories about this, but intentional severing of the relationship between jock and nerd that's caused a lot of problems in this country.
Well, that was a feminist project that succeeded.
These things all
Mofo.
revolve around like actual American history to a point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are obviously fictionalized. Obviously, we're adding things. We're playing fast and we're not. Andrew M. Dare is playing fast and loose with things. And actually, in the backs of the book, there will be like a little he's written some appendices that are sort of like, this part's real, this part I embellished.
So the first one is
The first one's Hunt for Confederate Gold, and then the other two.
Because part of the Confederate treasury nobody could account for. And
Amazing.
so why not send our our guys after it?
That's great.
And
then
Great
the other
premise.
two, one revolves around sort of the Boston Tea Party and the East India Company, and then the other one is about the Texas Revolution and Lafitte's pirate treasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
The Alamo.
and the
Very
Alamo,
cool.
right? There is, yes.
It's called.
It's called The Pirate and the Alamo. This the other one is the Boston Tea Party Conspiracy, and so we don't want these to feel like boring, like you're getting a history lecture. But I
They
think-
aren't boring.
But-
they're fun adventure mystery novels.
But history is
And there's bad
fascinating,
guys.
and there's cool stuff in it.
Right.
And American history is fascinating, and particularly for boys, but also for girls. I mean, this is like, it's a no-brainer to draw them in with actual history and stuff.
Yeah.
And part of this goes to what Dave has said, sort of our outlook is, and what we've been talking about, which is that this history is, I don't think it's certainly not, it's, what's the word, revisionist. It's not really even putting it back the way it was. We're just sort of like, I think we're writing this, developing this with this idea that like history is what it is,
Cool stories.
and they're cool stories, and like it doesn't have to have a political agenda, which then makes it really to have a political agenda in 20.
Well, I think one
26
thing
and
history does
2025, right?
sort of have to do, and you guys, if you disagree with this, please feel free to say so. But I think, if we are going to have like a coherent society, that we do have to have a shared narrative about who we are and how we got here.
It should be
And
reality based.
it needs to be reality based,
Yep.
but we can't do a kind of, as a culture writ large, a kind of choose your own adventure history. No, we do actually have to have a unified understanding of ourselves. And the way you do that is precisely through, cultural totems like, the Hardy Boys, or in this case, American Treasure Hunters. So I love this idea. First of all, the concept behind this book, when I first heard about it, is I'm very excited for these books. I'm sure, I'm going to get these for my kids and sit down and maybe even read them together with them. So I think that's great.
You
It
put
sounds
out
like
these.
there are three. Yeah, so those are our Hardy Boys books, and we're going to do a similar treatment, I think, for the American Treasure Hunters. And there's 3 planned for right now, and those are going to be available in 2026. That's
We're
the current schedule?
sort of.
Okay.
We're thinking about it.
We're thinking.
Okay.
That will be the
Technically, it might
latest.
be
It might be
2025.
even earlier.
They are. Yeah.
They're in the bag,
Good,
basically.
good.
They're in the bag.
So we can have these soon,
Yeah.
potentially by Christmas, but we don't want to make any promises.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're deciding. Yeah.
And then the idea is to continue writing these over the course of
Yeah,
the next couple
what
of
we
years.
hope is that you go into a bookstore or a library and like,
or order from the website.
in 50 years, I'm
50
saying.
years.
And when you could just blink and order them through the website or whatever the hell it's going to be.
Just download them to your Neuralink
my
chip
point is,
just by thinking
or
about
you
them.
Go to,
Yeah.
to any used bookstore or new bookstore or whatever, or library, and there's those Blue Hardy Boys books.
Yeah.
And like we want it to be the same thing.
Great.
It's American Treasure Hunters. right?
Beautiful.
I mean, that is our goal. That's what we want to do with these, is that they will become,
An iconic.
an iconic
series.
cultural touchstone. And to your point of like, we do need a cohesive narrative. I think these do, right? And I think these have a very generous. They're not propaganda, but they are America propaganda.
I mean, it's interesting, right?
You know?
I think long term, like in that kind of a time frame, what victory will look like is that the books seem unremarkable.
Right.
They just like, hey, how fun. And people don't think, oh, there was like a kind of almost like a dissident or a guerrilla act
Right.
to publish books that said positive, here's an adventure story that looks positively an American founding father, or looks positively at figures of the Confederate South.
Right.
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 I think it may be worth saying one of the audiences. Look, I think that these are books for young readers. They are mysteries. They celebrate boys who are willing to have adventures. There are car
There's
chases
a lot
and
of
fist
scuba
fights.
diving.
Yeah. Great.
And
Treasure
scuba
hunting.
diving and right.
Yeah.
And
Driving
and,
of ATVs.
and they're
to
funny.
Very cool places. Yeah.
The other audience is we want parents and teachers to trust us.
Yeah.
So we actually have a fairly strict, much debated, basically code, self-imposed code, like what kinds of things will and will not be in these stories, what kinds of things will these boys not do, you know. And because one of the aspirations is that parents will realize they can trust those books, or grandparents or teachers.
We want parents to trust them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you talked about this. I mean, it's not only that you can't find anything, because I've got my kids are basically the same age as yours. It's like I took them to the library the other day. It's like, man, you're almost like nervous to go in there because you're just like,
Yep.
what am I have to tell them to put back?
Yeah.
You know, it's just such a minefield, and we want to not. I mean, I'm sure some people will tell them to put our books back, but
Yes.
You know,
I certainly hope so.
you know, we want this to be something, like you said, that like people feel like they can trust, and that it's not gonna
Where every book is not about it isn't full of drug use, sex, and examining your sexuality.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Which is what all YAs are about.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the
It's
thing,
like-
that all of the adolescent experience has been reduced down to like 2 or 3 questions that is not really the full experience of what it means to be young. And, you know, even the experience of exploring these sort of anxieties and fears about growing up and becoming an adult, it's wrapped up in a lot more than just like sexual orientation, which has become the singular obsession.
Oh, 100%.
pretty
You
much
are what
everything
you
you-
want to do with your genitalia.
Yeah,
it's
and
the most
it's-
ridiculous.
all our guys have girlfriends.
Yeah.
And there is making out in the books.
Yeah.
But they are not. It's kissing.
Yeah.
And holding hands. That's it. and there's no drug use. We're just not going to do it.
Yep.
There's no drinking. We're not going to have them examine their friends who use drugs and drinking and reflect on it. It's just not going to be there.
Yeah.
You know, because
You can find that everywhere
you
else.
can find it everywhere. You can go
everywhere
find it
else.
somewhere else.
Okay, great. So that's American
that's
Treasure
that.
Hunters. That's going to fill this sort of YA boys fiction niche, which is desperately in need of books like this. So I'm very excited for that. Tell us a little bit about some of the other books you have planned for the sort of short to medium term. So going into 2026, I understand there's a full front list catalog that's going to be released over the next 12 months. Tell us a little bit about the highlights of that and what readers and book buyers can expect to see from ARC.
Our biggest book in 26 is probably going to be Larry Correa's new contemporary fantasy series called American Paladin, which is about, I don't know, Larry's in many ways a sort of prototype of the kind of author that I think is part of our audience, definitely, is the reader of Larry Correia novels. His Monster Hunter series, for instance, was a huge success. He was a New York Times bestseller. And the thing about Monster Hunter, which I always said, because I was his editor on some of his books, and really spent a lot of time with Larry over the years, with doing interviews and just hanging out at cons and things like that, is that while he is very good at the bang bang shoot 'em up stuff, he's a big Second Amendment guy. He wrote a book for me at Regnery called In Defense of the Second Amendment, where I was the editor on it and acquired it. Yet there's a quality to Larry's writing that is not just straight up adventure. It's got a humor to it. It's got a depth to it. Larry absolutely denies all this when he talks about it, but it's there. He is a quality writer, and that's sort of the epitome of what I'm looking for ARC books. Is like, you've got this guy who is beloved by guys that just want to read great adventure books about blowing monsters away. But he's really good. He's really good. And he's got just as much literary chops as anybody out there writing, lit fic crap.
Can you tell us a little bit about the concept of American
So the idea
Paladin?
is what...
well, this is the big thing we should say, is that this is really, I think, a return to form for him, right? And this, I know Tony worked with him, it's all Larry, but Tony kind of said what we wanted out of Larry. And
well, he asked us. What do you want me to write?
So, you know, but you mentioned Monster Hunter International. That's Larry's like flagship series, and he's continued to do those. But you know, he has gone off and explored other genres, and which is great. I mean, I always like
success.
I like following authors down weird, not weird rabbit holes, but like their interests become interesting to you, and seeing what he's done with some other stuff has been great. But this is sort of like getting back to like the thing he was, you know, it's like Scorsese directing another gangster movie, maybe, right? You know, or whatever, however you want to put it.
Like that.
Tony's like, don't make pop culture references that kids don't get. Anyway, but
Then it become a familiar litany as we've worked on the American Treasure Hunt.
Yeah.
It's like, no movie references. Kids don't watch movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't know anything.
They don't.
anyway, let's not
Go
do
on,
this on
sorry.
camera.
Let's not do
anyway,
this.
so but I want you to talk about it, but I think that's important to highlight.
No, please.
Like this is the thing that, you know,
It hit the
it's a brand new thing that hits like on every and like.
Well, so can you
here's the
be a
book.
little more concrete and explain what that is? Maybe
Yeah,
some
sure.
readers or
Yeah,
viewers are unfamiliar with Monster Hunters.
So Monster Hunter International is sort of Ghostbusters in a way, right? But it's very like Second Amendment Ghostbusters. It's the government does do some monster hunting, but this is an independent organization. Okay, that's Monster Hunter International. So it's kind of urban fantasy, is sort of like the large umbrella it might fit under. This is sort of the American Paladin is sort of rural fantasy, I guess. So Larry grew up in. We've talked about this on Gopherwood Lounge. Larry was like, I guess, probably the first guest, maybe one of them. But this is instead of a team, it's as in Monster Hunter, it's a single guy, and Spears is his last name. At least I don't know.
It is
for sure. That's locked in. Okay,
He loves that name.
It's a great name. I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
So
that it's not good. I just didn't know if it was locked in. So Spears.
Yeah.
And he is sort of like a loner, sort of a cowboy archetype in a way, right? Out in the West. And Larry is a Westerner. He grew up, what does he say, in like the cow part of California or whatever, right? Not Southern California, L.A., right? And he now lives out here in the Mountain West. And so, you know, it's really bringing a lot of his life experience of working on a dairy farm and stuff into this. And I guess the general idea is, you know, it's also pulls into this, what is it? It's not 411. What's the is it? What is the missing persons kind of?
It's 411 missing, right?
411, okay, sure.
The whole, it's a different kind of monster.
Yeah.
Than he's done. It's not vampires and werewolves, although that can be part of it. But it's more like an American version of these myths. You know,
Getting into things like cryptids. I think there's an Aztec death cult is kind of book one is driving the villains.
Yeah. So this is the way, and it draws on the conspiracy vibes and things of the Mountain West.
Yeah.
But it's also the mythology of the Mountain West in a way that, you know, how things have mixed out here. We're in the West right now. In a way that, you know, it's not the same thing as the way the Scots-Irish stuff in the Southeast and
in New England.
In New England.
It's not Scotch-Irish.
Yeah, all sort of made that sort of fantasy reality, collective unconsciousness of whatever the heck it is. Out here, it's different, and it feels different, and it feels more scary in a way, and it feels a little darker. I don't know. So like Aztec death cults that actually have gods that come through doorways. That he described it as these storm fronts that are moving, because the West is like that. You know, it's not. It has weather that'll come up on you out of nowhere and stuff like that, and like storm fronts that are like mythos that are floating around, and they contact and they create these storms, and sometimes it's okay and good beings or whatever come out, but most of the time it produces some horror that affects humans, and our guy goes and corrects those horrors and keeps people it saves them and keeps them safe. But he has to stay under the radar. It's very much more blue collar, his sensibilities than the Monster Hunter guy's a little bit more. He's more of a, and he's more of a loner, but he does have, he's going to develop, I believe, a support group, and those are going to be characters in the books and stuff.
So these titles, these American Paladin titles, are in development.
The first one will be American Paladin.
And when can we expect to see that?
I want to put it out for summer book.
Okay.
Next summer, 26. We're going to do a Kickstarter on this too. And we're going to do that we're in 25 right now. We're going to do that in September 25.
And so viewers can follow the ARC Twitter page and also go to sign up for the ARC newsletter on the website to get information about this.
We have, and Larry wrote, because I wanted to put out something in 25 and something as a sweetener for this new series. We got, I loved, so this is Alex Wisner.
Yes, that's the great Alex Wisner.
Who did a graphic novel based on your
correct, always with
your
honor.
memoir of
Wrangel,
General Wrangel from the Russian thing, and he's just Alex is just fantastic artist and creator, and so I thought let's pair him with Larry, and we did, and it has turned out so good. It's really good.
So,
so this is
the graphic novel.
The graphic
novel that is not an adaptation of the book. It's a separate story.
Yeah, it's like a day in the life of this guy Spears out of the American Paladin.
So is that completed, or when can we expect to see that?
The pencils are done. He's doing the ink right now.
Great.
And it is going to be available for as a thing that you can get in this Kickstarter we're going to run, and it will be available for Christmas presents, for instance.
Very cool.
And anybody that collects Larry's stuff will absolutely love this. Larry wrote the entire script. It is Larry. It's like a little short story set in this world. And this one has a really badass monster that our guy must face in a just nondescript Western town that I think is set. It's based on some Utah places that Larry knows. It's great, and Alex has done just a great job with it. And so the Kickstarter will be Larry's first novel. You get that, a special edition of that. We're going to call our special editions, unless you think we shouldn't.
On air, you tell us no.
That's right. On air, you just. I think we're going to call them Invictus editions. So we're going to do a special Invictus edition. We're coming up with the cool stuff, like a tip-in sheet. Maybe our production manager Libby is looking into whether you could shoot that thing.
I think that'd be great. Shot pages.
Yeah, as your author's signature, and then Larry could do his other signature. But
interesting.
We'll see.
Okay, very cool. So that's going to be part of a Kickstarter
that's
campaign
going to be
that we'll
out
see later this year.
Yeah, and the graphic novel that Alex has done of Larry's, and I believe our working title right now is American Paladin: Dust Sacrifice for the graphic novel.
Great.
So, and it's just beautiful art, and it's Larry's story in words, and it's just it's a work of art, and I'm really, really impressed and happy we're bringing this out. It's going to be our first book, really.
Okay.
So
alongside American Treasure Hunters, it sounds like those are going to have similar timing. So we have American Treasure Hunters. We have Larry Correa's American Paladin, the graphic novel, and then the first book in that series, probably summer, with the graphic novel being available later this year
Christmas
in 2025.
Yeah.
That's great.
Probably
So
November.
what else can viewers expect from ARC in the next 6 to 12 months? Let's talk about science fiction.
Travis.
Let's talk about Travis.
Let's talk about Travis's. So Travis Corcoran.
Yeah.
This is somebody.
David is the editor on
that I think came through you guys.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Travis was published in our very first Passage Prize, which I ran several years ago, which was really the beginning of this entire project. Was a literary arts prize, and Travis submitted this very interesting, I guess it's an essay. You might call it a poem, a prose poem, but it was categorized as an essay, this beautiful piece of writing. So I came in contact with him through that, and also we had been mutuals on Twitter for quite a while. And he had written a couple of science fiction books, and so when the ARC project got started, I thought he might be a good fit as an author.
Yeah, well, and I think you were right.
Yeah.
So he is doing, what are we, Red State Mars? Is that what we're,
That's
that's the working title.
I think he likes it, so
I
we'll
like
go
it,
with
yeah.
it.
And so this is sort of a retelling of the Texas Revolution on Mars. And so it's set in the near-ish future, right? And America has sort of, because of a Chinese attack, really, kind of got decimated. And
It's been a world war on Earth.
yeah, both literally.
But we're not on Earth in the book.
Yeah, and so China has essentially colonized Mars, right? And but now America, and like the Texas Revolution, right? Mexico invited all the Anglos to Texas to basically keep the Comanches and Apaches at bay and to settle it because they just couldn't seem to hang on to it.
Or make
Well,
settling
it's
work.
really was Spain. I mean, Mexico
Yeah.
had just
It
only
was
had it for a
Spain.
few years, but right. The timing is weird on that. Anyway, but then they started getting a little nervous. They're like, wait a minute, and then understandably, the Americans who settled Texas were like, it's similar to the colonies, the American Revolution. The deal was, we'll settle this for you, and you kind of leave us alone,
Yeah.
and let us do what we want, and don't tax us out because you're not giving us any services. So why are you taxing us? And then they changed the deal and started taxing. In the case of Texas, right, it was sort of we're going to start needling you, kind of to keep you under our thumbs. This is the same thing that plays out on Mars, right? So China is in charge. There are all these Americans living up there, sort of as an underclass or settlers or however you want to think of
The
it.
guys that do the work.
The guys that do the work.
The
And
indentured class, even. Yeah.
yeah, and now American power on Earth is sort of rising again, and this makes China nervous. They start to sort of turn the screws on the American, who they're not American. They think of themselves as Martian.
Yeah, they call themselves Martians.
They call themselves Martians, but they are heritagely, what's the word? Ancestrally from America or whatever. So war breaks out, and there's a war on Mars between these the Martian of American descent and sort of the overclass of the Chinese, and then on Earth, and again, just like in the Texas Revolution, America on Earth is reluctant to get involved because this makes, then we're going to have a war with China, but they want to support it, and it's a really cool. To me, I mean, and I'm making it sound like very one-to-one. There's obviously different aspects.
Yeah, no, he's
that are
and
intrinsic to the
and
world.
because
he
he's Travis,
created.
he loves technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and figured it. So he's got all this cool. Like,
He's in-
how do they live on Mars? How do they?
Very complex, systematic thinker.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
the kind of thing that I'm really excited for as a reader, knowing that he's doing something like this, is to see the world building aspect
Yeah.
of it and really get into the minute detail of, the construction of whatever it is up there. And also, I think, something he does really well is this sort of political intrigue.
Yeah.
And it's very sharp, and it passes the test of verisimilitude, even though you're dealing with some future case where it's a China of the distant future versus an America of the distant future.
Yeah, he's got real Heinlein vibes. His
That's a good comparison.
thing. And he's also semi-libertarian, I think, or pretty. I don't know. He's from New Hampshire. He's just that.
I think he's pretty
just
libertarian.
Whatever they
He's
are,
just
right?
from New Hampshire.
I
That's
think that's
enough
the
said.
deal.
Okay, I don't think we need to go any further
That's
than
right.
that.
No, the book makes a good case on an idea level. Hey, as we stand now on the cusp, maybe of becoming an interplanetary species.
Right.
What forms of organization might we adopt in the future? And he makes the case that the nation state is still a
Right.
valid and important method of organizing ourselves socially, and that the American proposition is a valid one and remains an attractive one for human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, and then there's still a series. He had those cool, like, genetically engineered talking dogs that have been up. He's going to do something like that with us, too. So
Yeah, so this is, I think...
the Aristella series is great, by the way, his self-published series. So.
Yeah.
He's also a dedicated, what do you call it?
Homesteader.
Homesteader.
Which makes for perfect segue into world building.
Sure.
Because you're out there on
Starting
Mars.
from scratch. Starting
right?
from the blank
and so
page.
I think,
yeah.
to me, these two books, in a lot of ways, I mean, we courted them. Obviously, we did this purposefully, but it's still, even so, still just such an amazingly lucky couple things to lead with. In that, I do think they really do kind of stake out really well, at least two, maybe not all of our position. Three with American Treasure Hunters, right? But we've got Larry, which is this very sort of muscular, but and a little dark, but ultimately humans win in the end.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's
fantasy. And then with Travis, we've got
Monsters.
this great hard science fiction. Heinlein is a perfect in that vein, but I still in my own mind can't quite work out how to express this, but like I love old science fiction, fantasy, music, movies, whatever, but I don't want to be a kitschy pastiche of it, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this. You can't really, it may surprise you to learn with these glasses and hair, I was just rockabilly, right? But like, and there's bands that can sound exactly like it's 1957, and it's kind of cool, but it's sort of like, where you can't do, there's nothing more there, right? And so I don't want it to I don't want ARC, I don't think any of us want ARC to feel like, man, that could have been written in Heinlein could have written that in 1948. We want it to feel like Heinlein in the way that Heinlein felt in 1948. That's the way to put it.
Or like
right?
Heinlein if he was a guy that lived in 2020.
The way that readers felt when they read Heinlein back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. We want people to feel that way when they're reading our books now.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, one thing that strikes me as I hear the descriptions of these two books, and that fits what you're saying here about doing something new, is that they're both in some ways about the frontier. There's a kind of rediscovery of, and at least in Larry's case, the literal sort of western frontier, this untamed wilderness, and of course Mars being the kind of next frontier for us as humans. That's the next place to go discover and settle. And this idea of rediscovering what the frontier is in a world where our physical landscape seems to have been sort of conquered, and where, in a creative sense, we've sort of covered all the ground that there was to cover, and now it's time to go search out new sort of creative ground to perhaps settle or
frontier.
Look into. So these all sound good. What else do we have coming down the pike for ARC? I know there's a couple other books.
Well, another novel we have coming coming up is one we've alluded to several times, which is called The Pickle Factory by D.M. Glennon, who is, I think I can still say this, who is a former officer of the CIA.
Yeah, he was. He was a knock.
And
for years. Yeah.
And the book is a spoof. It's a literary send-up of the CIA as a bureaucratic organization.
Brilliantly funny.
So this is a book Tony has sort of had in his back pocket for a while. And one of the first things we did at ARC was he was like, somebody read this and tell me if I'm crazy, because I think this is brilliant. And but it is weird and it is different. So I get the idea of like, I need one more set of eyes, right? You know what I mean? Like
if I was the only one.
Am I the only one, right? And so I like jumped on it and didn't let Dave give Dave a chance to answer. And I was like, I'll do it. And I think I texted Tony. Like I was like, I'm 5 pages in, and this is already like a yes, right?
Amazing.
Unless he blows it, but you didn't. You know.
Why the Pickle Factory? Can we without doing spoilers explain what that means?
It's an old-fashioned name for the CIA.
I see.
Yeah. So the joke was, I guess all the guys would say, "Well, honey, I'm off to the Pickle Factory."
Very good.
When they left their wives or whatever. And it is
he ran it through he ran it through them, and they did some, because everybody that's ever worked there has to get their books vetted.
Right.
If it in any way is about that. They did some redactions, and instead of taking them out, he just left the redactions in.
And then he put some in.
And then he put his own in.
The funniest one,
It's
if I
so
could just tell
funny.
you, like the
Hilarious.
humor of this book is like, there's a section where they're talking about like how much money per officer or agent or whatever they got to spend, and he gives you enough of the math, the numbers, that you could easily figure out the math with simple division, but like he redacts the actual number, and it's just like it's the funniest thing.
It's like a perfect idea.
And
That's
like-
what government does.
Yeah,
They redact the stuff that you could.
Anyway, and Tony said this, and I think it's right. And you mentioned, I think, Confederacy of Dunces, and God, what else does it remind me of? I don't know, Richard Brodigan in some ways, or something like
Interesting.
that. This just weird sui generis, however you say that. Again, whenever you put anything out, you have like hopes for it, right? Obviously, we talked about our hopes for American Treasure Hunters is that there'll be those spines, like there's the Blue Hardy Boys. My hope for this is that it's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas or Confederacy of Dunces, and it is. I mean, we want it to sell huge out the gate, obviously, but that this feels like a book that like
A cult novel that people talk about.
people
and
will talk, and then you'll be at a party, and when you've meet another person
Yeah.
who's read Pickle Factory, you're your BFFs.
One thing about books now I've noticed is that they're so sort of author driven. The celebrity of the author is as important as the work itself. This hasn't always been the case. You used to have authors that could disappear into obscurity, and actually that was a benefit to them oftentimes. And I would like maybe hopefully to get back to those conditions at some point, although we're not there. So I wonder in a case like this with Glennon whether or not, that puts constraints around how the book can get out there.
It does.
Maybe we'll have to hire an actor or something to stand in his place.
We're
But I
going to
do
have
wonder
to think about this.
Yeah.
We're going to have a publicity scheme.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit different. from
Okay,
this.
we'll get an actor. Okay, well, this will be fun. We can find some creative solutions.
There are ways.
to this.
We
We
could-
have this problem on the Passage side. We have anonymous authors, of course, who, for reasons of sort of petty political sensitivities,
You were anonymous.
I was for a long time. Yeah, they could lose their jobs, or life can become difficult, or let's just say uncomfortable in ways that they want to avoid. So they remain anonymous, and we still have to get books out there. We have to sell them and have them market the book. So this is a problem we're trying to solve as well. Maybe actors. Maybe we start a Passage acting studio for this purpose.
Figure it out.
Okay, so Pickle Factory, that sounds great. Anything else? Any other highlights?
Yeah, well, we could go back to we are doing historical thrillers and historical adventure, and we have got a book by Megan Basham, who is a conservative journalist
Megan.
that works for the Daily Wire and wrote a book for me at Regnery that Regnery ended up not taking, and so it went over to HarperCollins, which is her critique of wokeness in evangelical Christianity. So, which I thought was a brilliant book.
Yeah.
I forget what the final title was.
Shepherds for Sale.
Shepherds for Sale. Yeah. So anyway, but in the course of the original conception and writing this book, I discovered that Megan is one fantastic little stylist of prose, and she's a writer. She's not just a subject matter expert, but she's a writer, and she's really good at talking about how this affected real people. And she went out and talked to them, and she, it's almost Tom Wolfian in how she reported on like a reality, in a that she had researched, but that also came across. So I asked her, like, Megan, do you have any desire to write fiction? And she said, yes, I have a bucket list item I've always wanted to do, and it's this story. And it is called The Vesalius Club, right? Yeah. And it's just about this weird story from the 18th century, 1700s, set in England, about the main character is a woman. So we're not,
So this is another thing we should segue into, because we got a little smart aleck comments on the internet about this. You guys, when we say we want to make books for men, I think Dave's put as well, men inclusively. We're not going to like kick the girls. We're not the He-Man woman haters club over here. Little Rascals reference. How topical is that, Tony?
Yeah.
every kid will get that one. We should
all
put
the
that.
teenagers are like Spanky. Anyway, we are not. We want to write books that will appeal to men, and as Tony said, like I think there's a lot of women who feel like they've been left behind by the current
the same changes.
the same changes.
Yeah.
And the other thing
Yeah.
is, I know there. When we say also I think Dave put this like right. We don't care about your intersectionalities. We also don't care if you're not a dude. Like what we're going to publish women. As long as we feel like their books
Damn good books,
appeal to
good.
men and
Yeah.
appeal to the audience that we have in mind and it fitted our aesthetic. So this is not a, like I said, a men's only publisher. I think probably the way it will shake out is mostly will be male authors, but there's not like a.
That's not the goal.
That's not. It's
Well,
not.
we got
it's
two
not the goal. It's
female
not the
authors.
goal, right?
We got-
Like it's just
yeah.
like it's.
In our first 6 books,
Yeah.
2 of them are women.
Yeah. So I think
So-
that's a thing to say.
As
because-
authors, that is.
You know.
So anyway, this is about it's about the beginnings of the drawing of human anatomy. Is what it's.
Oh, interesting.
And so in England, they were trying to in the medical schools they were trying to do illustrations and put out illustrated books so that people, doctors that were using the new empirical medicine could know what parts of the body and stuff like that. And particularly, they didn't have any good books on the stages of gestation in women of babies. And so it's about this anatomy drawer who's a young woman who's just super gifted at drawing anatomy, and she works with doctors. And a bunch of corpses of prostitutes in London start showing up that she's using and that the other doctors have turned up. And it turns out that a lot of these might have mysteriously disappeared, and they're all prostitutes who were in stages of pregnancy. And so and they weren't just like, they didn't die and then get exhumed, which our heroine is kind of okay with. But they were probably not. They were probably murdered, and so she looks into that and tries to stop it because these women are being murdered so that somebody can draw them in stages of gestation. And they kill the
like a
hookers.
sort of detective.
And it becomes a thriller,
It becomes a thriller, and
Yeah.
she figures out, and then they come after her. And
Yeah.
her boyfriend's a doctor who is also, a sort of Watson character to her Sherlock. Not that it's a Sherlock Holmes mystery or anything, but it's it becomes a thriller and a mystery.
Fascinating.
It's all in, and I think she's going to pull it off. A beautiful book. I think it's going to be great.
And that's slated for 2026,
Yeah.
fall, winter?
Yeah, probably late 26 because
Yep.
she's not going to get it done until into 26. so.
Okay. And I understand there's a Theo Judson
Yeah,
coming
Judson
down.
just turned in. Ted Judson,
Yeah.
Theodore Judson, turned in his book, The Mandate of Heaven, which is crazy, near future science fiction.
And he had written a previous book.
Post-apocalypse, sort of. Yes, he did. He
Yeah.
did. It's a sequel to that. This is a cool book.
It's Fitzpatrick's War, right?
Yeah. Yes, Fitzpatrick's War.
And it's a sequel in the sense that it's in the same setting.
It's
and
the
Fitzpatrick's
generation
War is,
after.
Yes, it's not an
Fitzpatrick's
immediate.
War.
You won't have had to have read Fitzpatrick's War, which I think is out of print.
It's sort of. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of. I mean, you could say it's steampunk, pretty much. It's a world where, in order to preserve the human race, a sort of conspiracy group, I don't know, Illuminati, have created satellites that have made electricity not work, basically. And so it's a world that's returned to that state. And they've also enforced, and they give the power back to certain class of people so that nation states can be maintained. and they're trying to create a stasis. They're called the Timermen, and our guy is the Timerman, our main character. And that society that arises from that is really fascinating, sort of agricultural republic that he's created, that he's really put a lot of thought into how it would work, and why you, even though it seems oppressive in a way, the alternative in this world, the alternative leads to apocalypse again, and they're trying to prevent that. And it's got that Asimov vibe of the Second Foundation. These guys are Second Foundation guys that are trying to prevent another dark age and such. And so it's a cool conception. It's very adventurous and full of our main character is a brilliant plant scientist who's trying to also spy on a rising empire that's trying to sort of movement within this that's trying to overturn this stasis. And whether or not they're right or not, that's all the questions of the book. It's really a cool. There's no way to just characterize the whole thing, because it's one of those milieu books. It's got like elements of Asimov, of Foundation, elements of Dune, and elements of all the great sort of steampunk kind of sensibilities of, and it's all this cool amalgamation. So that's Theodore Judson. The Mandate of Heaven is probably the title we'll go with. We'll see. But it's in America. It's a North America. It's not America, but it's set on our continent. Also, another female author we have is Peachy Keenan, of course.
Right.
And
our
I want to talk about
Peachy,
her.
our beloved Peachy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who comes right out of Anon.
Yeah. What's Peachy writing?
Y'all, does anybody want to talk about Viva or?
I don't know. You need to talk about that.
Well, she pitched this to me.
It is a kind of in the world or continuation or riff on her Passage Price story.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think so. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's she pitched this to me as something maybe Regnery wanted to do when I was editing there, because I bought Peachy's book for Regnery. First of all, I'm not even sure how she arose. You probably have a lot to do with that world, of course. But I started seeing her stuff in the Claremont Review, and I started seeing her stuff elsewhere, and I'm like, man, this woman can write. It's like whatever it is that she's talking about, is sort of illuminated and made to glow by her prose ability.
Yeah.
She's so funny and so good.
Yeah, and I think the humor is a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
she's not trying. It's just so
and like
it doesn't feel like she's telling jokes. Yeah. Go ahead.
No. I love her stuff.
It's very digestible.
Yeah, and it is that kind of offbeat thing that I think I don't want to say that's all we're gonna do, but that appeals to us a lot.
Well, we want literary quality, but we also like the we like the jokes.
Yeah.
We want to entertain. We just want everything to be really, really good. So, and Peachy's really, really good. And so she pitched this to me at Regnery, and I was like, there is no way they will publish a fiction. They just won't publish a novel here. And so we talked about it again after we set up ARC, and the basic idea is it's a riff. It's like a reverse AI girlfriend novel, and it's a satire in a way, but not really.
Did you say it's Terminator sex bots?
Terminator sex
Yeah.
bots.
I'm familiar now. Yeah, I think I've.
But the idea is sort of that the world has got to a place where they've tried to market AI girlfriends. They're not AI. They're Android. They're AI incorporated inside of bodies, sex bots, and this is a hoary science fiction idea. It's been around for hoary, Hoary.
Yes.
Kids don't know that word, Tony.
Or the other one. That's true.
Might as well be making Little Rascals.
Well, it's
They'll
also
figure it out from context.
it's also a hoary science fiction.
It's both.
In this context,
Why not both?
So,
the
yes.
context will confuse them.
So, that's right. Well, we don't want to confuse children. This is not a book for children. This is an adult science fiction, near future satire, and it will be about this sort of world where these things have become ubiquitous, but are they really there, and are they really satisfying, and is this really, something's not right. I can't give away the twist. There's a big twist in this, and I can't say what it is, but there's a huge twist, and it all comes down to, and it brings in other themes like human trafficking and things like that are part of it that play into it, and it becomes a thriller, near future thriller adventure, sort of semi-satire, but really the story is about this guy and his AI bot, that what happens to them when the relationship starts to get more serious, and secrets are exposed that might cause big societal problems if they get revealed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's called Viva, which I believe is the name of the main character, and it's like it's set in that because Peachy likes science fiction.
Yeah,
and her first story she sold to y'all at the Passage thing was science fiction as well. So and she's just she's a fascinating character in herself to just talk to. Her big background in Hollywood, sort of the whole world, working for a big entertainment conglomerate, and then deciding to, she started having kids, and she decided, well, I'm a mom.
Yeah.
And these things will be secondary to that. And now, and so she has 5 children, and she's very Catholic. As she makes clear in her nonfiction, very traditional, but at the same time she's like this badass sci-fi writer. So
Well, I think too,
we're just so happy to.
if I can make a weird Beachy us connection, we'll see if it works.
Yeah.
You see, when she's very trad, and she is to some degree. I mean, not to some degree, she is in a way, but when you think of trad, you think of, I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Fields and
That's right.
And
That is not
she
this
does
woman.
not fit this
That's
aesthetic
right.
at all. And,
Yeah.
and that's what
Yeah.
I love about her stuff is sort of, you don't have to fit into this little niche box.
Yeah.
And I think that is something we want to do. Like we were talking very, very early in this conversation about we don't want to keep ARC in this little science fiction niche. This is we want to make books for the masses, right?
Yeah.
Or if not the masses, well, the masses would be nice. Masses, buy our books. But
Yeah.
Please,
but
masses.
with that's not within well-defined lines, right?
Sure.
And I think that's what I love about Peachy's writing and her thinking, is that she is in some ways this very trad mom, but in a lot of ways not what you think of when you think of that. And I hope that ARC is this for publishing, right? In a way, yes, we're very genre fiction, but I think we're going to look different. I think the books we're going to pick are going to be different, and not try to compartmentalize ourselves into this little thing.
So let me broaden the scope on that note a little bit, and we've covered, I think, the catalog for 2026.
No, we got more.
We got more. We got more.
There's more.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. But I have a question. So thinking out, over the next few years, I'm curious, and Dave, I'll start with you. Is there something, and feel free to be as specific about this as you want, a concept for a book, an idea, a genre, a form that you think is missing, and that you're hoping, you're crossing your fingers, this manuscript's going to land on your doorstep, is going to come across the transom. What does that look like? The manuscript you're hoping to see?
Well, broadly, we're this whole thing is an experiment in so many ways. One of the experiments is, can we actually have an imprint where we will sell not only science fiction and fantasy, but a thriller and a literary novel all in the same imprint, right? Like, this is not how Random House does it. So that's an experiment.
Originally, it's what's called Random House.
Well, okay.
But yes, but continue.
Is that why it was called Random House?
It was literally because Bennett Cerf was like, I'm just going to publish random stuff I want to.
Awesome.
Anyway.
So less of an experiment than I feared. So
it worked it might work for us.
The goal is not to check every genre box, but there are genres that I would love to see. I say maybe we would love to see, but Tony will tell me if I'm wrong.
No.
So
Well, the thing is, the reason, I mean, Dave has a sensibility for fantasy that probably David and I don't have as much. I mean, you have a deep love of fantasy novels, and I want us to take advantage of that as an editor.
Yeah.
What would you choose?
Yeah. I appreciate that. That was not one of the genres I was going to mention.
But okay,
we haven't really seen any alternate history. So we've seen some things that sort of touch on that space a little bit, but we don't have like a alternate history novel. And I think we'd love to have a writer who gave us, good. Not like we're suddenly going to publish all alternate history, but we'd love to go out with some of those, right? Similarly, and man, every time we say we're open to Westerns, people go, that's great, but no one submits us any Westerns.
Yeah.
We'd love to have great Westerns. We'd love to have big, really, well, we have science fiction novels, but like big idea, epic scope science fiction.
we need a far future,
Yeah.
sci-fi epic science fiction.
Can you guys provide
series.
maybe some, models or books of the past that you're thinking of when you say you need something that kind of fits this category?
For epic far future science fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Gene Wolfe sort of reads as fantasy, but like it is science fiction. That might be an example.
Yep.
Something like the Culture, Ian Banks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Or Dune.
Dune is an example.
Or David Weber's books. Which are military science fiction. I'm very much would like a huge war in the future book.
Yeah.
That's Space Navy based, but it's a really believable future and not this is just the present pushed forward kind of future. Not space fantasy, in other words. I want science fiction, epic science fiction. Niven Pornell book. Those are the kind of things that we're actively seeking.
And these are the kinds of things that you guys published at Bain quite a bit, right?
Yeah. It was a Bain thing. Some of it, it depended. We aren't Bain,
no.
And we're not trying to recapitulate any of that. So, except I would certainly love to have the next David Weber, and I think we're going to find him. But we also want some epic fantasy, and we're looking, actively for a great epic fantasy series. It just can't. It's got to have its thing.
You spoke earlier, real quick. Let me just jump in, because I'm very curious about this. I'm not an expert on genre fiction. I read it, still read it sometimes. On occasion, the right book recommended by the right person, but it's not something I actively pursue on my own. And you mentioned that fantasy worlds, fantasy novels have a different kind of metaphysics than sci-fi, or there's something like distinct about what they're trying to accomplish in terms of the sort of question of reader experience. And so what is that difference? When you say like a novel is a fantasy rather than like Gene Wolfe's a good example of like where that boundary might be, what are we talking about? What's on one side of the line versus the other?
Well, I have a huge theory about this, but our resident fantasy expert probably has to.
From a reader's point of view, genre doesn't necessarily have to exist. The reader can just like the book, and that's true from the writer's point of view too. It's the people in between it to think about genre, right? The bookseller and the editor. The bookseller has to figure out what shelf am I putting this book on. And so there is a level at which genre just is, does it have swords and dragons or ray guns and spaceships?
I would say this. I want you to finish, but I would interject to say that I do think genre matters both for the writer and the reader too. As a reader, it provides a sort of coherent set of expectations.
Sure.
And a lot of stuff can go unwritten, unstated. And there's a kind of starting place for understanding between the writer and the reader based on the genre category it's a part of.
Sure.
And you're also informed by books in that genre, stories in that genre that have preceded it. So there are certain kinds of references, and as a writer, you can play with these conventions and subvert certain conventions that have an effect on the reader, but only because both the reader and the writer care about and understand that they're participating in a very specific kind of story.
This is all true, and also viewers can love the Thundercats, and you'd be like, is this fantasy? Yeah, there's like magic and swords and monsters. Is it science fiction? Well, Panthro is driving around a tank, right?
I did not see that reference.
Yeah.
Guys.
Little rascals.
You're stuck in the 40s. Huh?
I watched Thundercats anyway.
But I do think there are those genres broadly persist because there's something basically philosophical going on at the core. Okay, and I think that science fiction is basically the what if language of human technology, science, engineering. Maybe also we throw in there social organization, and we think about a novel like 1984 or whatever. It really wasn't about the technology.
I think philosophical ideas.
Yeah.
That are.
Well, I think fantasy at its heart is the what if language of the human spirit and the unconscious mind, and can a book do all those things? Yeah, sure, right. But then we're writing Thundercats, and we're like, right? Most books fundamentally are one or the other, even if they look like one but really are the other, right? Space fantasy. I mean, there are books that happen in space, and they have spaceships, but like really what they're about is
they're fantasy novels.
Yeah, they're really fantasy
novels.
This
is, of course, Star Wars.
So science fiction is constrained by sort of material laws of nature.
It needs to be plausible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's weird to say Star Wars isn't science fiction, though.
Yeah, I don't care, but it's just something you can say. Yeah, but what Dave says is really the idea that the thing about science fiction is that your touchstone is plausibility. The thing about fantasy is logical consistency of that interior world that it's set in.
Mm-hmm.
So logical consistency of the magic or whatever the hell is what a fantasy novel, a fantasy world, the setting part of fantasy delivers. It's like it makes sense within this world, and I think that it's fantasy is looking inward. Like David said, it's you're walking through a subconscious landscape.
Yeah.
And science fiction is like it's still a subconscious landscape. All fiction is, but it's outward looking. Fantasy is looking at the values within ourselves, and that landscape, the mountains within, and the fantasy maps are really the moral mountains of humanity. Fantasy is much more about morality and about ethics and about what's good and evil than science fiction or
and about
fiction.
Identity.
In fact, good and evil are embodied, and yes, what we are is.
Well, this is all
in fantasy novels. So,
yes.
So the characters, to me, in a great fantasy novel, they're wandering a interior landscape of the human collective unconsciousness or whatever. That's what's happening with Tolkien or, with other great fantasy novels. To me, not all of them are like that, but that's and the reason that people so identify and want to dress like those characters and be those, you want to be a fantasy character. You want to be Aragorn.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think, well, Aragorn's a great, literary character. You think, man, I'd like to be that guy. And I want to be Gandalf someday. Or it'd be so cool to know them. That's because it so resonates so much with our interior. What we conceive, how we conceive of ourselves morally, They're the good guys. I'm with the good guys.
And are there books that look like these, but they stay away from the sort of the deep issues or struggling with the real questions in favor of just being an adventure novel? Sure, there are. And that's when, okay, this is a book with swords and dragons. It's a fantasy novel, right? This has ray guns. It's going to go with the science fiction.
Even those, they partake in it in some way. I mean, even like the Martin books,
Lightly,
which are
indirectly. Well,
he's trying to subvert
tear
everything.
down Tolkien,
but
sure.
yet the thing is that like in his attempt to tear it down, because he just can't avoid it because he's such a good writer that he recreates his own
version of it.
Yes, exactly. He does exactly the same thing.
It's like
uses
Moorcock.
The thing that feels true and coherent is the thing he's trying to run away from. He can't,
but he can't get away from it.
violating like these basic fundamental laws
So he
of
just
good storytelling.
He just doesn't finish them.
Yeah.
So that's his escape.
Yeah.
It's like Michael Moorcock. You can rail. The reason you can rail against Tolkien is because he's bigger than you and he endures. And like way more people have read The Lord of the Rings than Epic Pooh, much less or even Elric of Melniboné.
I mean, I love those Elric novels. At the same time, I was reading Tolkien. I was reading the Elric novels. Because there is a certain majesty in Elric as well.
Sure,
with his
and it's giving you
soul-stealing
a kind of
sword that
it's giving you a kind of critique of Tolkien, but the critique entirely obtains its power from the power of Tolkien.
So.
Yeah. But this is okay. But I will say this, right? Like, I feel like what we have been talking about, or you guys have been talking about more so, and I like co-sign on all of it, right? But it strikes me that is really, you're talking about something in the basket of epic or heroic fantasy, right? There is like this whole other mess of stuff, or in science fiction, like we're talking about more. I'm not going to say hard science fiction, but harder-ish science fiction. There is like this whole basket of miscellaneous stuff that you can't. What else would you call it but fantasy? But there's no dragons. There is not quests. It's not in another world. And now of course, I mean, like, well, we got Lovecraft sitting up here, right? Like, that's not. That's I guess you can call it horror, right? Cosmic horror.
This horror fades into fantasy, fades into.
Yeah, or I think can I talk about the Twilight Zone? I love like the Twilight Zone and those Ray Bradbury, and Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont and those guys from Southern California in the 50s and 60s. Their stuff. I mean, there's no other name but science fiction or fantasy, but it's not really.
It's its own
space battles.
That's why. I mean, we're just like cutting with broad strokes here. But
right,
the thing about all of us is that we read so much that this other thing
have this conversation
all come in.
Yeah.
And so I think that to me,
and we love it.
Has always been like that's my favorite stuff is these sort of like weird, not what people think of when they maybe instantly think of science fiction. You think of spaceships or fantasy, and you think of dragons, right? Like these other kind of often set in more or less the current age or a very near future, and that kind of thing. Anyway.
Well, Larry's an example.
I mean, one thing this
American
points
Paladin.
to this conversation, I mean, getting back to what Dave was saying about this experiment, can we put together a catalog of books that doesn't have a sort of singular hard genre focus? What I think we're coming to, though, is that the idea that none of these books, the really good ones, fit very neatly into a single thing anyway, and that maybe we're better off having a sort of broader aperture for what we're trying to produce. I also, I do wonder about the timing of the Great Awakening, let's call it that for now, and what that did to literature, coinciding almost perfectly with the internet swallowing our lives, and everything being sort of mediated, our relationships with each other, with stories, with film. I mean, everything, every medium is getting affected by the internet in a very complicated way that I haven't seen literature grapple with in a meaningful way. And I wonder if a lot of the problems with literature, the way it kind of just came to a halt in the early 2010s, was partly this inability to properly grapple with what it means to live these sort of like digital online lives. And so I'm wondering, maybe this is just unique to my own interest, but do you think, or where do you see science fiction maybe in particular, but also these other genres?
But that, I mean, cyberpunk was trying to do that.
It preceded it, so it was predicting
cyberpunk
it.
got wiped out by its own mediocrity,
Yeah.
and it much like modern poetry, it disappeared up its own butt.
Yeah.
But it also got wiped out by the onset of these DEI forces, whatever you want to call them, that came in and just science fiction got infected, and it was, and a lot of the stuff that you see came out of science fiction too, because it's the counter culture that became our culture for most of the 2010s. I mean, it was just like a science fiction convention. I felt like I was living in a science fiction convention some of the time. That was
Well, why do you think science fiction was so susceptible to being taken over by this particular set of ideas?
because it's
Some of them came from science fiction.
Yeah.
that's what I'm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's also because a lot of people that are science fiction fans have not all of them by any means, certainly not me or a lot of people, but many of them have given up on traditional religion, and they're trying to fill that with something else.
Is it the idea
And-
that we can use these ideas from science fiction and technology itself to kind of engineer ourselves out of the problems of being human?
Yes, to create a sort of technological solution to the problem of the hole in your soul.
Yeah,
and
right.
it ain't there.
Yeah, or it's to live in the fantasy, right? I mean, the true hero's journey is you go into the fantasy land and then you come back with the new wisdom and power. And reading a novel should be that. You submerge yourself in the adventure, and then you come back with the wisdom or power. But there's a sort of a kinship between someone who wants to dress as a squirrel all the time, okay, and someone who thinks that gender is a thing I can choose, and what I choose, whether it's to dress as a squirrel or to tell everybody I am a whatever, everybody else has to respect that, right? Fundamentally, it's a failure to come out of the fantasy world and say I can have an insight from the fantasy, I can get a power from the fantasy, but like I live in a space where I am not a squirrel and I am a male.
Yeah, yeah.
You want and it is a way of being stuck in something that pleased you when you were a child, but you're an adult now, and so you have all this sexual complexity coming in. You fall in love with men and women, and so instead of just being dressed as a squirrel, which is kind of fun, whatever, you have to pull in your sexuality, or you have this this social idea that your race has been discriminated against, and it has affected you in some way. And so you have to pull that identity in. And so it all becomes enmeshed in this fantasy world that you've created, this new religion and you turn it outward because, unlike real religion, which has had centuries to figure this stuff out, and what you become is the converted, like the guy that quit smoking and now is like going around pulling people's cigarettes out of their mouth and stuff like that, because everybody has to adhere to this thing that you think you've discovered.
Yeah.
This new religion you've invented around these highly suspect ideas of some kind of solution to the human dilemma, and they're not solutions, and they're so new that they led to dysfunction, and there's just a lot of like, I just want to be 14 again, but you can't go back to that. It's
So, a lot of the science fiction reading audience, as well as genre broadly and truthfully literature broadly, has committed themselves to this new religion in a very real way. And I am skeptical of the idea that we can just sort of easily pull them back from the brink. And
We can't. It's not easy.
so, like, what is the strategy for ARC? I think about this for Passage as well. What is the strategy for somehow, recruiting back some significant number of potential readers that might have, gone the way of wokeness? Or how do you navigate what is certain to be resistance to the ARC project from these people who, I disagree with them or not, they have a lot of influence.
Absolutely.
So how do you deal with this?
You just got to be more entertaining than the other guys. That's the way. That's
Just
the
beat them.
only way.
Yeah,
You
with
just gotta
content.
But your
Yeah.
stuff's got to be better.
I think too.
Do you try to, do you engage them? Do you try to have this argument? Or do you just let them
I don't
have their little island and we just build something new over here? And the people who see it for what it is can defect to us.
I think a lot of times, man, we both on the creator side and on the consumer side, we're in this, like, right?
Yeah.
What is like something on X, and it was like the number of people who you get on X or Facebook or wherever, and it feels like the whole world's on there.
Yeah.
And this is its own world, and it is everything. It's like a tiny fraction of the population actually posts regularly. Like, you're among, all of us here are like among like this really rarefied weirdos.
It's a freakish.
actually.
Yeah.
True, but
Right,
those,
And I'm not saying that's not important, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think there are a lot of people, writers who don't really buy into this whole thing, but they feel like they have to. And maybe they don't consciously, right, feel like they have to, but they feel like they've got to, kiss the ring.
Yeah.
And I think if we can just be here and be like, you don't have to do that, guys.
Yeah.
I think it will, and on the other side of this, I think I was talking about my father-in-law who was a nerd back when it meant something. So I like to say, he was translating Elvish before, when that, was socially unacceptable. Now it's almost cool, right? My point is, he's read science fiction fantasy since the 1970s, 60s, 70s, right? He's been into it. He could not have told you, of course, referring to like Sad Puppies now, what the Hugo, he probably maybe knew, that's just like a word for science fiction.
Yeah.
He couldn't have told you who voted on that. He didn't know anything about it. And so I think there are a lot of people that maybe have left and we've got to bring them back. But I think there's a lot of people that they just, they're reading these books not because they so believe in the ideology or so love them, but because that's what's on the shelves.
Yeah.
And if
So
we
they
can be on
have.
the shelves,
Yeah.
literally and metaphorically. And I think just sheer existence and getting the word out, there is a core that's they're going to hate this. And there's a core of people that are going to love it for everything we've been talking about here. There's a lot of people that would just be like, that book looks cool,
And persisting and being happy. There a lot of people have been left behind.
Yep.
And would happily.
Okay, can we
gravitate.
let's start. We briefly brought up Sad Puppies at the beginning of this conversation. Can you give the sort of escalator ride length précis on what Sad Puppies was and where this all got started?
Wrote
Yes.
a politically incorrect guide to science fiction.
That's true. I can give you a nice
Edited by
précis.
somebody else.
Yeah. I have to say first,
Elizabeth.
though, it seems to me like the great failure of the Tolkien fan language enthusiasts is that none of them has ever translated Elvis's best songs into Quenya or Sindarin and then recorded an album called Elvish Presley. This seems like so obvious to me. Why has no one done that?
Passage Records coming in 2027. Okay.
75
Arc
years.
Records. Yeah.
It seems like you're uniquely poised to do that. Dave. You play the guitar. You speak Greek, Latin, and probably Elfish.
And I look like Elvis at the end of his career in a white jumpsuit.
Yeah.
So, So okay, so let's talk about Sad Puppies a little bit.
What is that great Bruce Sterling story? That's my favorite Bruce Sterling story. It's about
Lester Bangs.
Lester Bangs, yeah.
Dory Bangs is the name of it.
Dory Bangs. It's about, and there's this great passage about, it's from the point of view of the pill that killed Elvis, like going through his system and coming out the. It's this beautiful little piece of. Anyway, sorry.
I have not read this one.
Yeah.
So, in accordance with one of the late 20th century mantras of the left, the personal was political.
Yep.
Or became political. Okay. The personal level at which it started was Larry Carrillo was nominated for the John W. Campbell New Writer Award, and it was Reno, wasn't it? It was Renovation. I think it was the WorldCon in Reno. I could check my notes, but
Yeah. There used to be
Give
an
or
award
take.
called the John W. Campbell Award.
yes, it's no longer called that. It's now called the Astounding Stories
It
Award.
doesn't matter.
Whatever.
what it is.
John W. Campbell was a extremely important 20th century science fiction editor who was right of center. There was a new writer prize in his name, and in about 2017 or something, they changed the name of it.
Yeah. He
So-
wasn't really right. Never mind. It's
Yeah.
about the best new writer in science fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is what it was for.
So Larry-
and Campbell discovered people like Heinlein and published them in Astounding, which
Yeah. Back in the great day when magazines was the
yeah. So he was,
forum in which all the stuff got
yeah,
published.
all of the pulp writers went through Astounding, except probably Bradbury. Maybe.
Bradbury did not.
He went to the other guy. The never mind.
Yeah.
That's the pulp history of science fiction in the 50s is great. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So that's
That was the-
there are many side paths. You asked for a précis. Let me try and summarize. Larry is a finalist for the Campbell Award. It is awarded at the same time the Hugos are. It's not a Hugo, but it's it's like a Hugo.
Sort of a Hugo.
It's the same voters voting at the same event. So he goes to the
And
event.
this would presumably get your books on Barnes and Noble shelves and improve sales and sort
Eh,
of burnish your reputation
whatever
as
it
an
does,
important
yeah.
person, and
yeah,
okay.
yeah. If nothing else, it
It
makes
was a
you
big
feel
award
happy,
in
Yeah.
science fiction.
right?
Okay.
And it was presented at WorldCon along with the Hugos.
Yeah.
And the membership of WorldCon voted on it.
Yeah, and Larry didn't think he was going to win, but he was excited. He thought Larry is a big nerd. He's just the nicest, most generous guy in person. He went to Reno with a big open heart, thinking everyone's going to welcome him with an open heart, and instead people called him baby killer and would not invite him to parties. Well, he owned a gun store. Or had in the past, he had previously owned a gun store, right? You're a merchant of death. I don't know if he coined the phrase "international lord of hate" coming out of this, or if this is one of the things he was called. But
And this was coordinated, obviously. This wasn't just organic hate, or
it may have been coordinated in the same way that chickens coordinate all their attacks on the chicken they want to exclude, right? Like I don't know if it was.
It was a movement that was going on throughout genre stuff, including, I mean, you know, Gamergate.
Yep.
It is related to that
Okay.
intimately.
Although I think this actually precedes
It did
Gamergate
precede it.
by a couple years.
I mean, things started, all the bad things in the world started in sci-fi, as well as all the good things.
Yeah.
So,
Larry gets socially excluded and called names. This is dumb. This is a foolish move on their part. Because the end result is that basically destroyed the Hugos, right? So Larry is an accountant. He goes and looks at the contest rules and how this works. And he says, oh, this is not the whole world voting on the best fantasy books. This is like 500 people. This is a little club, and it's mostly the same 500 people. And they show up, and it's their annual party
and
of
they
friends
get lobbied by certain publishers.
where they get dressed as squirrels, and they get to meet their writing heroes. And
genitalia.
yeah, and they imagine they have different genitalia, and then they vote on the science fiction books they like. It's the prize of those people. And he said, well, I know that some of my readers go to these things. And he did the math and said, I am confident that I can make recommendations and they will become finalists. And there's discussion happening on panels, in blogs, on Twitter about this stuff. And Larry says this is I could I could make.
All you need is
recommendations
to
be
buy a
finalists.
membership to the WorldCon to vote for.
But even without buying a membership, right? So this is subsequent. First is I have enough fans who are attending. I can make finalists. Yeah. They tell him no, you can't, and he says, well, I'm going to do it, and lo and behold, he does, right? And there he puts forward a kind of a slate, and like the next year, Larry, Slate are all finalists. Now he said up front, I don't have enough votes to win. I can make finalists, right? But this is like a foreign body now, right? And so that's entered the WorldCon, and so the antibodies start acting. And the next year, is it the next year? Maybe it's over 2 or 3 years.
2013.
It's in Spokane, which is like 2016,
Right.
isn't it?
Was that? Did Brad take it over?
Well, Brad takes over after that year.
After that, okay.
So
Was it 20?
I think Spokane was 2016. Sasquatch.
All right.
I could be give or take a year.
We were
right?
there.
We can look this all and get the notes on Wikipedia, but broadly, where there's a strong reaction back against this stuff. Okay, so
and it was coordinated and planned,
and absolutely coordinated, and it's coordinated with some of the science fiction publishers and with some fairly big names in science fiction and fantasy writers.
A lot of there's fan base Hugos that are about fan writing.
Yes,
and so there was
it's best novel, best short story.
Larry's side of the fan, the fandom that likes Bane books.
And then there was the problem too, right? Like where Larry was like, I think this is my read on it. He was like, here is a list of things I think are good that I'm recommending. That got twisted into Larry told everybody who to vote for, right? That's not the same.
And that's not what
thing.
Right. There was not a conspiracy on the so-called right.
Right.
There was a conspiracy to
Yeah.
shut it all down on it was fixed.
Yeah,
it was absolutely fixed.
So it turns out that you can vote if you are there, but you can also buy a $40 membership. It's called a supporting or a non-attending membership or something, and you can vote, including you can vote on the vote for where the WorldCon 2 years in the future will be, because this moves around. And what happened was a massive number of non-attending votes flooded in. I think previous to that year, so it's like a ranked choice voting,
and there's no way to check where they were. It's just if you just paid the money,
it's anonymous.
So,
Yeah.
It's
you could call yourself whatever.
Yeah.
So
it's like a ranked choice voting, but one of the options for every category is none of the above. So in theory, you could have no award, and that had only happened like twice before. It almost never happened. There were 5 no awards that year, and
all of the ones that were
contested,
that were Sad Puppies contest,
and
it wasn't just that. I was in the green room in the backstage, with Tony, and they had prepared beforehand. There were coasters that were asterisks because they called it the asterisk, and it's like, how do you?
Also a reference to the sphincter.
That's true. But how do you? These were woodcut coasters. It's like they
did it in advance.
It was prepared. It was all
they did
set
it in
up.
Advance.
It was set up to humiliate these people in person at this event.
Yeah, here's your wooden asterisk asshole.
I felt like killing them.
So
Tony
I think
was really professional about it. I felt like wringing their frickin' necks over that.
So for example, so here's the moment for me where I was like, wow, you people you're destroying this house.
Yeah.
It was the editor long form award. Okay. So again, Tony Weisskopf is a finalist. Tony, by the way, won more votes than any previous winner had. A non-fixed election, Tony Weisskopf would have won the award. That was
She's
Larry's
super
recommendation.
beloved in fandom.
Yeah, she is. People who don't share her politics like her. She has decades of friendship. She her first job, I think she was like 16 or 17. She got a job working at Bain. She's never done anything but. Yeah. So
and she's hugely involved with fandom.
Yeah.
And fanzines and everything. So,
and then Vox Day and Sowards, by the way. Oh, I think not Betsy, but what's the name of the other woman who was an editor at DAW for a lot of years? Sheila Gilbert. Wasn't Sheila Gilbert one of them?
I don't remember.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Ann Sowers was
was
Jim
my
Butcher's
editor.
editor. She's a huge name, right? So there's some real big names up here. Fox Day, no, but the others are all, and by the way, women. And David Gerald was hosting. He was the MC, and he said in this category,
Who's a just
no
complete
award.
tool and asshole.
He's a complete asshole. He's part of this.
Yeah.
So the immediate response is booing,
Yeah.
right?
Because no award.
Because no award won. Because what this is saying is, rather than give the award to any of these important science fiction editors, by the way, happen to be women.
Yeah.
In the name of our liberal politics, we would rather burn the house down. So there are enough rational, reasonable people who had voted for Anne or Sheila or Tony, who booed, and he said, "No, it's not appropriate to boo. You can only cheer." It was so insidious. It's so creepy.
They weren't right because
Because they weren't booing a person.
They weren't booing.
They were booing the fact that
Yeah.
these little speech fascists had blown the whole thing up, rather than have the terrible possibility that Tony Weisskopf might get a Hugo Award.
So
And there was there was other organization going on. There was an alternate award ceremony hosted
Yes.
by
Dude, that was the thing
another
that ticked me
asshole.
off.
George R. R.
George
Martin.
R. R.
And
Martin.
we don't have to say his name.
We can,
Yeah.
everyone knows.
we can
who he
totally
was.
say his name.
He set up.
That's- I just don't want to give him any more.
Well, okay,
publicity.
somebody with a beard set up. This was the biggest a-hole move to me of the whole night.
Yes.
Because this person who we won't name famously has had a Hugo Losers party because he lost the Hugo one year. This is fun, right?
Sure.
And the winners are not allowed in, right? That's
Sure.
the whole thing, right? It's just for the people who lost.
I know. I went to one.
Yeah.
I'm a Hugo finalist.
And
the Hugo Losers Party.
so
is
this is-
fun.
this is cool,
90,
right?
Yeah.
96 though,
What
when
he-
it mattered.
What this person did was turn the Hugo Losers Award, or excuse me, party that year into an alternate award ceremony.
Here are the people who
where
should have
he
won.
gave out awards to people that not even people who were nominated, like, not like, right? Like just random. I'm sure their work was very good. I'm not like saying that, but like just gave out alternate awards completely just based on his opinion of who really, if
Yeah.
these wrong people hadn't gotten in, blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, what the hell is that,
So-
man?
But he was
Like,
also sneering. Like there were people
Yeah, it
there
was-
who had been who were nominees, who were finalists, and he at the end looked around and he said, "Well, I don't see anybody else here who's worthy of an award," and ended the ceremony that way. The whole thing was just like a gigantic. I mean, it's an antibody reaction. They felt threatened by Larry, who was proving he could consistently put finalists up, and I think they may be worried they were going to lose. So they reacted by
They were going to lose.
not just gaming it. Well, Tony would have won,
Yeah.
but like actually being giant a-holes about the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not
So,
just,
so sorry, you're going to make a comment.
No, I don't know. It just, what was I going to say? Well, and the thing I felt terrible for, I mean, right, was there were people who kind of like didn't even know
Sure.
anything about this.
That's the thing.
and like and Larry read
they
their
were
book
good-
or Vox
good
Day,
people.
like
Sure.
thought their story was
Like-
great and got it nominated.
Kevin Anderson, a perfectly decent.
and
Or the fan writer guy that was heavily Chattacon connected. I mean, LibertyCon connected. What's his name? I forget. But they were just nice people, and they
Right.
just love science fiction, and they were so happy that they were nominated, and then they just just did that to them, right? And I just
in public.
and it was heavily. This was heavily done by editors at science fiction imprints. One the main one
In particular.
who we will not name either, but
Yeah.
and after that I was just like, I want to take these fuckers down.
Okay, so I
But
just
we also had a great party.
to-
that
to-
night.
to
I would
zoom
say
out- to zoom
an
out a
excellent
little bit.
party that night
Yeah.
in our suite.
from the specifics of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it sounds like the broad takeaway is there was a kind of coup almost of the science fiction community, or at least a kind of declaration that from this point forward, there are going to be certain people who are going to be gate-kept out of
Yes.
prestige science fiction. You're not going to win any awards. You're not going to be able to participate in these big publisher events,
Yes.
et cetera. And it sounds like a lot of influential people who perhaps might have been in a position to say no to that, instead went along with it.
Participated.
that's right.
And the thing is that it may have been that was already happening.
Well, so
right?
this is
Because
my question. It sounds like this is just the manifestation of
That
a
it comes
long-term
out.
trend, and it was going to happen at some point
affection
eventually.
It was, but the
anyway.
way they did it was so
breaks through the skin.
nasty.
Yeah.
And the I mean, the other thing is that awards are just bullshit anyway. They're bought.
Well, even
so-
still, you know, these awards have a certain prestige. They do influence consumer behavior, so they do matter. And so the question is, okay, now we're almost a decade on from this episode, and there's been a lot of it sounds like the science fiction genre community who's been left in the wilderness since this
A
event.
lot of
and the
people
idea
that
of
were
art
not
now-
on one side.
Yeah.
Didn't take a side. They were also
Yeah.
offended by this. So it's not just that
Yeah.
right leaning science
Conservatives
fiction.
are
Yeah.
upset or
It's
whatever.
like every like decent person
all the normies.
Yeah.
was upset by this.
And this was so.
Well, and it was this hostile. I mean, like, right, the Hugos, right? It was this insular group that felt like the outsiders were coming in, but it wasn't just that they've changed the name of the Campbell Award because people are like, oh, he's racist
Yeah.
or whatever the hell. It's like he's the most important editor in the history of science fiction, guys. Also, right? I don't know how it's still called the Hugo because I'm pretty sure
Hugo Gernsback was not
wasn't like a
some
modern
21st century
I
progressive.
don't
but
think so.
they at the same time, like the World Fantasy Award, they changed it.
took the
because
statue.
it was a Gay and Wilson. It was this cool, Gay and Wilson did all
Great.
those Playboy cartoons and
Yeah.
designed this bust of Lovecraft,
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft, and they were like, we can't have Lovecraft,
Right.
and so
It was called the Howie.
it was called the Howie. So they changed that, and I've talked to people who've been around and who've won them, and they're just like, man, I wish they hadn't changed that. But like they felt scared to say anything. And I'm like, well, maybe if a few of us would have said something.
Is there an appetite to create a new sort of awards infrastructure?
There was, and they did.
yeah.
They tried that with the dragons at Dragon Con.
And how did that fizzle out?
It's still there.
It's still there. The challenge is
The
it's
problem is, and this is like a broader thing, which I know you,
Yeah.
Lomez,
Yeah.
in this context, have talked about, right? Like, it takes, it takes a lot of time to build an institution, and it unfortunately doesn't take much time to tear it down.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, who knows? I guess maybe the Dragon Awards, but the Hugos were 70 years old, and
Yeah.
and so
They
this,
spit on the legacy.
yeah, they destroyed the legacy of this, and so I think
I was a Hugo finalist. It was a big freaking deal. I was sitting next to Gardner Dojois, and and I was up for best short story of the year, and it was it's 96, and I was just like, this was one of the greatest things that I felt like an out of body experience with this.
Yeah.
And then to have that that thing taken from me, but also taken from all these other great writers
right.
who
And
have
I've-
been
I've-
honored by.
So when you get nominated for the World Fantasy, they give you a pin, or maybe it's if you don't win. I don't remember. But it's a little lapel pin of the house. And like I've got a friend who's got one, and he's
But
just
Tim
like, man,
Powers has a bunch.
well, right? But
got-
he's like, I get dirty looks if I wear it from certain people, and it's like this crap,
Yeah.
it's
And
just-
so I think that's the challenge, and maybe this is the enterprise of passage, not in this genre space. It's the enterprise of ARC. It's other people, hopefully, of sort of maybe in some way rebuilding,
Yeah.
in
In a positive
Well,
way.
this is,
Positive
I mean,
way.
we talked earlier about how do we get people reading again? How do we get people invested in this stuff? And there does have to be some kind of credentialing mechanism. You need, content comes first. I'm no fan of critics often, but you do need critics. You need a critical infrastructure. You do need some amount of gatekeeping. And when I say gatekeeping, I just mean curation. You need, we talked about this. What the time it takes to read a book is, days. It's not like a song you can just put on and decide, okay, I like this band or not in a sort of reasonable time frame. while you're driving or doing
it's
5 other
not
things.
even a movie.
Or a film that you can watch a trailer of, or let alone the whole thing in one night and decide if you like it or not. A book is a long-term investment, and you need help from people. You need recommendations, and you need things like awards that can signal to a readership, to an audience, what's good, what's important, what's been validated by the rest of the people in the community. So, I do think what we're doing here, one is it starts with the work. You got to create good stuff. But on top of that, it might make sense to put together some kind of critical infrastructure, some kind of credentialing mechanism through awards or some other way where we grab all these people who have been alienated. And I think, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build an arc. We're trying to get people on board who want to go to the next place. And
the ARC prize is an example of that.
Yeah, so that's one prize, but maybe we expand that and we try to collect all of these people who have been left in the wilderness in one place and bring them along and create that center of gravity for whatever comes next, because it really is. It's sort of tragic what's happened, but I guess what that means to me is there's some obligation or imperative for us to build something next as
it's crumbling.
as the banner falls to the ground. Perfect timing there. Yeah. So I'm curious what you guys think about the relationship between these various properties. The sister imprint Passage that we're running. We also have Chapter House, which is a homeschool curriculum and kids imprint. ARC, of course. So do you see a sort of direct synergy between these, different imprints, and how so? And what does your experience in publishing tell you about how these relationships should work?
I mean, we absolutely. I think we have a synergetic relationship. I ran the first Treasure Hunters by Josh Centers, right?
Uh-huh.
Who's running Chapter House?
Who's running Chapter House?
Running
Yeah.
Chapter House, and I was like, well, I want these to be able to sell to homeschoolers and classic high schools or classic school systems that people have set up and things like that. And I said, I do not want anything in there that they would say, well, we hit something we can't do. And he was giving me some pointers on that, and it was very useful. Very helpful to hear that from him. For instance, I mean, that's just a direct cooperation thing. But there's also I think our readerships overlap.
Yep.
What do you think? I mean,
yeah.
I feel like this is
I've thought a
this
lot about
thing
this, of course.
called ARC is as much your creation.
A lot about it after this
Well,
conversation.
no, I knew what I was getting myself into.
I feel a little. I mean, one thing we should say is Sad Puppies is years behind us. I don't even care anymore about any of that stuff. But bringing it back up also brought back up vitriol that it's not something I feel. It's just.
I mean, this starts from the premise that I believe in books. We all believe in books, and we believe in the power of books, and we believe in the power of storytelling. And we want to see a thriving publishing industry and a thriving literary culture in this country in particular, among men, and among men perhaps on the right as well. And that's something that's been absent from the culture for a long time. Big chunk of my adult life, if not the entirety of my adult life. And we're making a bet. We're making a bet that there is an appetite, a hunger, a desire for good storytelling from books specifically, that and there's an audience for it. And I think this broad bet is the same for Passage as it is for ARC. And so, from an investor standpoint, from a betting standpoint, you want to make bets where if one wins, the other wins as well. They're not working against each other. So it's the same premise. And I do think the audience for Passage will have an interest in this material. They've asked us about this material for sure, so I know it's there. I think probably there's a big sci-fi market. There's a market of, readers, intellectually curious people who may not know about Passage because they don't live online. They spend their time elsewhere. They're not on Twitter, and they just might not know we exist. And I see ARC as a vehicle to getting our stuff to them. And I think these different imprints can sort of cross-pollinate in that way. I think there's also the kind of natural author overlap. Peachy's an example of this. Travis is an example of this as well. And I think we're going to run into a lot of occasions where people writing on political subjects might want to write a novel and have a novel in them, and vice versa. And then I think from the standpoint of, basic values, basic themes that are important to us, and perhaps even more centrally, it's what we're not. We're in large part defined by not being part of this sort of woke left, thing that has taken over the rest of the culture. And that may just be enough for now. I mean, I think there's a sort of, I've talked about this elsewhere. There's an interest on sort of telling the truth, okay, and being clear-eyed about what is true about the world, about the human experience, about our place in it. And then there's also these sort of capital T truths. When we were talking about fantasy, for example, we were talking about this sort of inner truth, this sort of inner spiritual life that is being manifest through sort of fantasy stories. That's no less that's also a kind of truth that I'm referring to when I say that good literature is focused on the truth. And I think that's something you guys want to do. That's something we're trying to do. And I do think there's some consistency and overlap with the audience who are going to be interested in this part of thing. And then beyond that, I think there's a bunch of people out there in the world who don't know about ARC, they don't know about Passage, but over time they're going to come to learn about it because we're going to be delivering into the culture these stories that people are going to want to participate in because they're better than what's on offer from sort of the prevailing and legacy publishers.
And they're physically beautiful books.
Well, that too. I mean, the quality is, across the board. That's the idea.
Yeah. I was going to say, I appreciate all of that, John. That's interesting. I wanted to point out also there may be at least a certain amount of shared aesthetic. I mean, some of the things you guys have published include books we have here on the table. We talked about the memoir of the White Russian General, but that's a collection of Robert E. Howard stories. Which and it's not just Conan. It's Conan. It's
all the
westerns and it's and this is only volume 1. Volume 2, I think, is coming out soon.
Coming out this fall, so that'll be out in a matter of months.
Of short stories of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yep.
With, by the way, fantastic preceding the first page of each story. There's a great, very atmospheric illustration by Alex Wisner, the guy whose stuff we're looking at.
All over.
So, and I think there's also some synergies of platform. I mean, I've started for the Gopherwood Lounge, which is a podcast with very wide potential range of stuff we're going to talk about. But I interviewed V. N. Ebert. We'll run that soon. And Monday should be talking to Rambo.
Cool.
So there's a certain amount of ability to talk to each other's audience, hopefully, I think, too.
Yeah, we're building an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And any good ecosystem needs biodiversity in it.
Yeah.
And that's going to include all sorts of different, types of species and different sort of elements, different forms, different mediums, different approaches to culture. And I think one thing that's good about what we're doing is that we can have certain aesthetic disagreements or preferences that aren't sort of perfectly aligned. They ought not to be aligned. So long as we're aligned in these more fundamental ways, which is I think the more important case. And so I think it's good. And we can only do so much. I hope what this also does is create some light, create some heat that will attract other people into this ecosystem who are doing things that are totally separate from us that aren't part of this sort of larger corporate infrastructure, but they're building their own things. Maybe they're doing video games. We've talked a bit about like tabletop gaming, for instance. There are all sorts of ways that people can participate in this, even if they're not formally a part of our organization. And we want to invite those people along. We want to bring as many people in who feel comfortable being here. And so I think that's, the best thing we can do right now is just start like tilling the soil, building out this ecosystem and bringing in talent into it. Other thoughts? Okay.
Amen.
Well, okay. Amen to that. So then let's, as a final question.
I love the idea that we're a giant traveling Chautauqua.
Let's sort of expand on that a little bit. I want you guys to just tell me what you see from ARC on a 5-year time horizon. What does ARC look like? How many books are we putting out? Are there other sort of categories of content that you guys want to try to produce? Where does this sit within the larger sort of genre fiction or just literary landscape generally? Give me that picture of ARC 5 years from now.
Well, I'm absolutely committed to the idea that we're developing IP, intellectual property, with these books, and so we are. The story is what we're buying, and the elements of the story. But the book is a beautiful embodiment of that. But there can be other things you can do with it as well. Like for instance, Larry's book. Haven't got him signed, but he's all but committed in principle. Nick Searcy will do the audiobook reading.
Amazing, yeah.
Of it. Yeah.
Right.
The actor Nick Searcy, he's going to do a great job. For instance, so I want every dang book to have an audio version. We're going to do pretty ebooks as well. But beyond that, we're going to try to create synergy with Passage TV. And develop our stuff and to listen to what you guys are developing. So maybe we can do something there. Maybe we can work something out. So I'm thinking next year the plan is 12 books, one a month. Basically, we have a 12-book year. Yeah. After that, this is the plan we went in with. The next year we ramp up to 24 and see what happens from there. But it would be great if every month, or we have 2 seasons of 12 books each, long term, and to do that, it's going to take a lot of work for us to find those books and to find those writers, because to keep the quality up, and we are absolutely committed to that. Because that's a lot of books. Of course, there will be series books, and so it's going to be the same writers writing a bunch of them, because part of genre is series. It's very important. Just like a TV series, you don't have one show. That episode is not it. It's the series. So, and genre is built around the series in many ways. So we're going to absolutely develop series. I want Larry's thing to become a series for sure. American Paladin. I want it to be the defining series for Larry Correa, for instance. And we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. So. And this involves, and while I say I'm using writers as tools to reach readers, we're going to give writers, we're paradise for writers. We absolutely are committed to developing their story as property. We're going to try to get it out there in every way possible. And I didn't even want to talk about AI or anything like that, but
Yeah, we don't need to go there
don't
yet.
Go there.
But, we're talking about sci-fi. I mean, it would be probably neglectful for us not to at least address
if
the question.
It becomes a thing that we can use, I plan to use it, and I don't have any problem with it.
It's a good cop-out.
It's not going to be any creative aspect.
Lots of plausible deniability.
We may or may not use
it. Okay.
But if you do want to know my attitude toward AI, you might read my book Metaplanetary, which has a lot of AI characters in it. And it is my attempt to think where this will eventually go.
Yep.
So anyway, that's the sort of long-term plan is to make this into a story engine and develop it that way, and not just be a traditional publisher.
Yeah, and I think, one thing I'm trying to accomplish with Passage, and I think you guys are on a really good start with ARC 2, is developing this kind of trust with the reader, where the reader knows that anything that gets put out under this imprint is going to be good. It may not be to your specific taste, depending on what kinds of things you're interested in, but it's going to be high quality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that's really important when I look around at other independent publishers, but big publishers too. It's just strictly volume. They just throw everything out there. You have no idea if it's good or bad. They don't care. They're just, whatever sticks is what they care about. Mm-hmm. So they throw everything at the wall and expect a lot of it just to fail. I think one thing we're doing here is making sure that every single thing we put out, we believe in. We believe deserves to exist in the world and deserves to have a big audience.
We love it.
But it's good. It's going to be good. No. And that's an important, I think, quality for us to establish. And
yeah. I think I'm going to tie together two things I said earlier. One, at some future date, success will look like we just look normal.
Yeah.
And other publishers look like us.
Yep.
I hope we get there. It seems unlikely to me we're going to get there in 5 years.
So I think we're going to move past this initial moment of just speculation and idle chatter. Once there are books out there and people are just concentrating on the content.
Yeah.
I think one reason why some of this stuff exists is because this is a unique project in publishing. It's not every day that, there are resources like this that are brought to bear on putting out new books. And certainly the period of time we're coming out of, and that we're in some sense responding to, the last sort of 10, 20 years of publishing, is unique in the way that it closed off so much of the sort of literary world. And so, yeah, I think this is like a fresh kind of exciting moment, and I think people are talking about it partly just for that reason alone.
Yes.
And so that's a good thing, and I think it's now up to us to deliver on this promise, which I'm certain we'll do, and I'm certain you guys will do at ARC.
It's really all we think about.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified we might not, and yet I'm so hopeful we will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to pick up on a theme that Tony was saying earlier, I think the thing that will get us through and all these reactions and the uncertainty, the place I want to see us get to, is connecting with readers. I think if we can reach the reader, it's not going to matter if we're excluded from prizes, or if some newspaper says some dumb thing, or somebody gets the wrong idea or gets the right idea and hates it.
Yeah.
Right. We got to connect with the reader.
Okay, guys, one final question for all of you. I didn't prepare you for this, so I apologize in advance. Outside of the ARC/Passage catalog, recommend a book that you think readers might not be aware of, but they should pick up and read, and that gives them some sense of not just who you are, but the kind of thing maybe you're trying to accomplish with ARC and the books we want to put out.
Yeah.
Take a minute to think about it if you need to.
No. I have one. I've already talked about it, though, on... I'll pick a different book. So I hope now Tony will not feel like I'm stealing his thunder. One of my favorite living writers is Tim Powers. Mm-hmm. And a book I've talked about on the Go Forward Lounge is Declare, which is a John le Carré novel with genies in it, with jinn trapped in what is maybe Noah's Ark on top of Mount Ararat. Absolutely fantastic spy/fantasy novel. I think that won the World Fantasy Award.
We love Tim Powers.
Tim Powers is great. And since I already talked about that book, another one I might suggest instead is The Stress of Her Regard, which is a vampire novel.
It's also Tim Powers.
Which is also Tim Powers, yes. So Tim works from the weird little unexplained loose edges of real history, and he'll immerse himself in some biography or a history of some period, and take all the little weird stuff and try to find a magical secret explanation for it, right? So The Stress of Her Regard is a vampire novel, but it's about vampires who are connected with stone, and they live above the tree line in the Swiss Alps, and who inspire the circle of poets around Keats and Byron and Shelley. So they're present at that sort of famous meeting on Lake Leman when they bet, right? Frankenstein comes out of that,
Right.
Effectively, Byron emerges as the doomed hero. His poetic gift comes from these vampires, but he hates them, and he is fighting them to the death using his swordsmanship, his wit, using the Italian Carbonari as his foot soldiers. Absolutely fantastic, literary, historical, fantasy horror novel.
Great.
Yeah,
Dave?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I can tell you a lot of books I love. So I mentioned Willie Vlotten. Who man.
Let's go back to it. Yeah. Give
Okay,
us a
so
Willie Vlotten
so
time.
Willie Vlotten, he's a musician. He was in a band called Richmond Fontaine, and I can't remember his new band. Anyway, grew up in like northern Nevada, and also I think he was in Portland, like he was part of like the alt country scene in the 90s, and he's written probably half a dozen books now. They're the only thing that I was hesitant about is they're pretty dark. Like they might be darker than most of this stuff. And they're just literary realism, right? Some of them edge into crime novel territory, especially called the one The Night Always Comes kind of really pushes a little bit into that, that's a cool book because it's like one 24-hour period. But, you know, but how we talked about the humans win in the end, maybe having a more expansive than like a, hooray, we defeated the empire every time. You know, his books, they're kind of noir. They're very downtrodden characters in them, drinking problems, gambling problems, but to me they always have a lot of heart, and they're about the human spirit. And even the ones that end one ends real bleakly, but even the ones that end pretty bleakly, there is sort of a glimmer of like humanity to them. And man, I just couldn't love that guy's books enough. Any more than I do. The other thing, though, that comes to mind is I love Charles Portis. And True Grit. I mean, True Grit's like one of the great American novels, I think. But there was one he wrote called, Norwood? Yeah, Norwood. That's the name of it. Am I right? I'm thinking, yeah, it's Norwood. And then Dog of the South. But then the other one was Masters of Atlantis. Well, he wrote 5, but Masters of Atlantis. And that would be an ARC book, I think, right? If he wrote that now. True Grit would. I mean, obviously, we would publish True Grit, right? But
In a heartbeat.
But Masters of Atlantis is sort of this. It's a secret. A lot of not Masonic, but you know, secret societies, machinations and stuff. But it's a comedy, and like through the whole thing, you get to the end, and you're like, wait. I don't mean did any of this happen as in it wasn't a dream, but you're like, was this entire secret society like fake? This entire is all this, and like you don't know, and I don't think the characters know, and it's so brilliant and funny. And then the other guy I'll mention one more, which is That Anything by Richard Brodigan. I would love to trout fishing in America. If we could get Trout Fishing in America 2025, like you know. Which I don't know. Have you guys read this? You obviously have, right?
I have not.
It is the weirdest book. It's not a novel. It's not a short story collection.
Yeah.
It's just the strangest. And that to me, you know, I think all of those, but particularly Trout Fishing in America, right? And any of his In Watermelon Sugar or The Abortion or whatever. Just what an imagination and what a unique voice and perspective. And that to me is always the exciting thing, is finding something that like nobody else could have written it.
Yeah.
And so to me, you know, you'll talk to people, and part of the reason is you've got to do an elevator pitch, and you want to talk in easily digestible terms. But when people start doing the like micro genre, well, it's sort of a steampunk with an overlay of the. I'm just like, that just feels like you're kludging together things. Like the books that are exciting to me are the ones that that really do. I mean, you could speak broadly enough about anything; it makes sense. But that really feel like they came out of a very particular mind and a particular way of looking at the world, and a particular, often off kilter set of sensibilities. So
Very good. David's our experimentalist.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Tony,
He
you got
reads
any
outside,
recommendations?
Hey, I don't know. I hate putting
Give us something. Give the
I'll
people
give you
something to, you know,
Well, here's the thing.
go
All
to
right.
Amazon
This
and
is what I told Dave when we were talking about this. If you want to get through me as the final boss, if you're submitting,
Yeah.
all you really need to know about me is that my 3 favorite books are Moby Dick,
very good.
The Sun Also Rises, and The Moviegoer by Walker Percy.
Okay.
And those have
Perfect.
formed my aesthetic and personal ethos. And if you could just combine those into a book, I will publish it.
All you need to do
I endorse all
is
3
take
of
the
those
three of
wholeheartedly.
the greatest novels ever written,
That's right.
and then
Three
make
greatest
one that's as
American
good as all
novels.
3 of them put together.
And make it like, real patriotic and shit.
Uh-huh.
And we'll put it out, man.
This we're like joking, right? But there is like a sense to where I feel like, at least to me, maybe Tony is the most enigmatic or whatever. Is that the right? Most, yeah. But like, I don't know, man. I feel like we're pretty obvious in our tastes.
We've been trying to tell
And, like,
everybody.
so I think if you just did like
We're
the
not a black
minimum
hole.
amount of research into us, it would be like pretty easy to figure out what things would tickle our fancy. But maybe I'm
Okay.
wrong about that. I'm obviously seeing it from the inside.
Well, if you do have a manuscript, you can send it to arc.press. There's the novel contest going on. We have a Kickstarter coming up later in the fall, correct?
Yep.
We got a couple of projects probably coming out this year. The bulk of it, though, will come out in 2026. So sign up for the newsletter so you can be informed when all this stuff drops.
Please.
We are very, very excited about ARC and the catalog coming up. These are going to be great books, very badly needed. I think people are going to really love the stuff that you guys are doing. So thanks for all your work. This was a great conversation, and we'll talk more
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.